and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 9, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 6 of 8 as our drivers have made their way down under to Australia to take on the ultimate challenge of confidence, and that is of course the Mount Panorama Raceway. Most of us will refer to it as the Bathurst Motorsport Circuit, and this circuit, located in New South Wales, is no stranger to infamy when it comes to ultimate close racing. Where it be the host of the Bathurst 1000, alternatively the International 12 Hours of Bathurst each year, this is a circuit which puts the ultimate test on drives in terms of keeping it out of the wall, keeping it smart, keeping it consistent, and also if you're looking for an overtake, being the boldest on the brakes down the extended straightaways this circuit has to offer. But as our drivers get ready in the background, as you can see, it is definitely going to be a round to remember tonight, and we'll take you through the schedule shortly. But a little bit of housekeeping first. This broadcast is being brought to you live from circuit side, and it's being brought to you on the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. Indeed, if you go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing, you can find us there and tune on in. And hello to all you guys and girls in the chat. And I do apologise, by the way, if at any point my voice goes. I'm suffering for a little bit of a cold at the moment, and I'm taking as much medication as possible, but with the level of race that we see for our drivers all season, my voice may just happen to break. But who am I? Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action over the whole of this season, and what a season it has been so far as we make our way into the final quarter after today. But as we look to the season calendar, we can see that we started off all the way back on the 8th of January with the Open in the United Kingdom at the heart of British motorsport, and that was the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. There we saw plenty of battles, but it was Daniel Thomas who stood up front in the elite class and ran away with the proceedings. And then a week later, over to the US of A, indeed in our race at Daytona Road Course, we saw our drivers take on the Florida State circuit, and there it was the rise of many a driver in between in the AM class, and what Adrian Kukulis were the faster drivers there, but Eden Frazina, the driver who lost it all with a major incident, cost him dear. Then we made our way from the United States of America back across the European continent by way of the Atlantic Ocean, and we made our way to the Italian Temple of Speed, and that was Monza Grand Prix circuit for our third sprint. On the 22nd of January, it was the rise of Håkon Grebstad, the driver in the elite class, who led at the front of the field in the McLaren MP412C for Ignition Motorsport that seemed absolutely uncatchable, and indeed, despite the draft that every driver tried to attain, he left everybody in his wake. And then on the 29th of January, we wrapped up the first half of the season in round number 4, and that was at the Circuit de Nevers-Magny-Cours circuit in France, for our opening endurance round of the 2 endurance rounds available. And there we saw the technical change really confuddle a number of drivers, but it was the arrival of John Eddowes onto the scene in the Pro class, bringing on home that ultimate win and carrying him into lead of the championship. But let's not also count out Casper Brock there for his great performance as well. Then we had a week's break before returning last time out round number 5, and that was on the 12th of February last weekend with our sprint at the German circuit, the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and there we saw the tempo continue. It was indeed as if our drivers had not had a break at all, with multiple free wide moments, a couple of major incidents, but classic racing all the way through. And well, we've seen it tie up in the elite class with 2 wins apiece for Håkon Grebstad and Daniel Thomas, with Thomas bringing home that key result last time out. But after today, on the 19th of February in the Australian state and at Bathurst, we've seen our drivers make their way to the penultimate round next week, and that will be on the 26th of February for our final sprint on the calendar, and that will be in Sao Paulo, Brazil at the Interlagos circuit. And if you're looking for a circuit that is no stranger to late championship drama, we'll look no further than Interlagos, and we'll talk a little bit more about it next time out. And then we'll be bringing it all to a close on the 5th of March with the endurance race round at the Sebring circuit in the United States of America. Indeed, on the old wall airfields, we're going to be seeing our drivers do their utmost to bring things home on a high. We're still with plenty of racing to go. We do need to give you a quick recap of the championship standings, and that's why we're starting 5 minutes early today with the broadcast, because we missed out on that last time out. And after 5 rounds now, we can see that going into tonight in the elite class first in the Drivers' Championship, it is Daniel Thomas who leads the way by 8 points over Håkon Grebstad. But the 2 drivers have 2 wins apiece. Now the gambit will be, can one of them break the deadlock and make it a 3rd win, or will we see a new name arise to that class of winners in the elite class? Because outside the top 2, we have a 20-point gap now to Joe Newman in P3, and the Simam Racing Red driver continues to lead the charge there ahead of Daniel Lee, who had a difficult race last time out, albeit having a very close finish versus Sean Valandia, albeit outside of the top 10. And for Daniel Lee, it's all about now trying to turn around what was a difficult day last week and bring home a great result in the privateer Ferrari. Ryan Moles in the ProTech Motorsport Audi Mimo 49 points, holding a good advantage there over Matthew Chris, but a far way off of the top 4, and now in a bit of a no man's land with Matthew Chris really showing a great amount of tenacity last time out and taking the fight to the leaders in the elite class, but the instant between himself and Grebstad cost them both dear, and Chris losing out on a potential race win there and only on 32 points. Still 5 clear of Dean Powell with a further advantage of 2 points over Sean Valandia, and then we do see Sam Congreve and Martin Tilling completing the top 10 with Josh Fletcher best the rest P11 and counted down there to Sight Anthony, Jacko Taylor, Damien Lobbett and Sam Sherwood for the top 15, with Joshua Pratt in P16 having a difficult day at the Nürburgring circuit for UKSimRacing Tower and trying to turn things around, and Dan Blackwell not in attendance there, falling back to P17, but still 4 points clear of Ryan Davies, with Nathan Foster and Alexander Hill completing the top 20, and then Stephen Masters, Austin William Campbell, James Folks and Cameron Hawes completing the elite standings. But as we come onto the pro class standings, we can see here John Edo still leads the way after a second place last week, and that second place being critical for the UKSimRacing Gibby driver to keep 7 points clear of the rest of the field, albeit now we have a new name in P2 for the pros, and that is Peter Cox of UKSimRacing after an absolutely dominant display of victory. The big question is, can he make it another win today? Because keep in mind, we have yet to have a repeat winner in the pro class. We've had 5 rounds, we've had 5 winners, and could we see somebody finally break that trend, or will we have a 6th winner in 6 races today? Well, we'll have to wait and see, because we are seeing winners all the way up the board there. Alex Gaines as well, race winner in P3, still at 79 points, albeit not in attendance last time out. Edward Knight there for Indian Motorsport Spark, having a difficult day at the Nürburgring, but still keeping the points on flying there in P4, 3 points behind Gaines. And then Nathan Scott completed the top 5 there with 63 points, a little bit off of the top 4, but still well within arm's reach and keeping a good gap there to Chris Edison in P6, and Chris Edison putting up the defensive wall at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, but not working out for the UKSimRacing driver, ahead of David Larson there by 13 points. It's Tom Fart, Jeff Griffiths and Joel Amos who complete the top 10. Best the rest in P11, Colin Patterson, the UKSimRacing driver on 17 points, 3 clear of Darren Fellows, with Paul C. Smith, Jakob Boschov, Stuart Brown, Mark Collicott, Dion Wren, Martin Fernie, Daniel Merchant and Ollie Pimley completed the pro standings. And as we come onto the AM classification, we can see Aaron McGregor leads the way there by 85 points to 74 of Casper Brotner, and for McGregor it was back to normal last time out after the win at Magny-Cours, returning to the form with another win, so 2 wins on the bounce, and McGregor really is the man to beat. But let's not count out the likes of Casper Brotner and indeed Michael Warrington, 2 drivers who know what it's like to be right up there on the podium, with the old dudes in cars drive 10 points clear of Warrington, and now the UKSimRacing Car Marte driver looking to try and continue that charge, albeit only ahead of Darren Sharples based on result countback, with Darren Sharples having a strong performance last time out versus Warrington, and with Eden Frazina not too far behind there, only a further 7 points behind. The battle to be inside the top 3 could not be closer. We could also see Adrian Kukulis there on the same amount of points as Frazina, 57 points apiece, albeit result countback separating the 2, and both drivers there looking to stay inside the top 5 and close the gap to the top 4. There's no question about it. Then James Conley, a sizable 18 points off of the top 6. He's still 7 clear of Matt Maddox, with Brock Freites and Daniel Pays completing at the top 10. Best the rest, Mark Johnson there for UKSimRacing, having a difficult round last time out. Indeed, only picking up 2 points, and not the way he wanted it to flow, ahead of Ben Watkinson, followed up by Eric Steigen, then Thomas Barjuk, Ryan Gonzalez, Jack Bullen, Flank Klein, Simon Hartley, Richard Curie and Adrian Garcia completing our AM standings. But as we then come on to the Teams Championship, we can see after 5 rounds, ProTech Motorsport continue to lead here by an advantage that sways back and forth, but the one thing that's always stayed the same is that they have been the championship leaders on 159 points versus UKSimRacing's 133, so a delta of 26 points. It's not enough for an entire round's advantage yet, but it's half a round in course, and you can see UKSimRacing, they're starting to break away from UKSimRacing Gibby, with Indian Motorsport there in P4, really following up the best of the rest outside the top 3, with the top 3 now starting to break away, albeit breaking away from one another as well, so we are seeing a little bit of a stalemate in the championship. Albeit outside the top 3, we're not seeing the stalemate whatsoever, with 92 points apiece for Indian Motorsport and UKSimRacing Car Marte, and it is going to come down to fine marnings, albeit I think there's a bit of a counting error there with some of the point scores, but we're going to play it regardless. The ordering is correct, and we can see Old Dudes and Cars in P6 there ahead of SimRacing Red, and it could not be closer in the hunt to be in that P4 position, with Indian Motorsport Spark further with 11 points behind, and SimRacing Blue and Symphony White completing the top 10. BDM Racing best the rest in P11 on 46 points, 14 clear of UKSimRacing Tower, with UKSimRacing Copper and UKSimRacing bringing up the rear of the field, followed up by Symphony Black and Team Zor there on 6 points points last in the standings. But coming from our standings then, let's talk a little bit about our circuit for today, and that is none other than the Mount Panorama Circuit, located of course near the city of Bathurst in the state of New South Wales in Australia. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided us by iRacing.com, is a circuit like no other. Firstly, this is one of a limited number of circuits that makes full use of public roads. The roads that you see our drivers drive on today, they are conventional public roads which commuters will use to go back and forth to the town of Bathurst. And indeed, if you live in the local area, you ever decide to visit Australia, you can drive around this entire circuit completely free of charge, albeit it is street speed restricted. You're not allowed to race around there, of course, because it is not a racetrack through conventional use. But as our drivers take to it as a racetrack, they'll make their way across the start finish line and charge into turn number 1 at Hell Corner. And as they rise their way through turn number 1, they'll charge all the way up the first long straight in the hunt for turn at number 2. And breaking the way into Griffiths Bend, it's all going to be about being smart on the brakes there with a highly cambered corner, meaning they can dig in on the throttle and charge their way up into the cutting at turns 3 and 4. Onto the brakes at turn 4, again a heavily cambered corner, but one that's very tight on the apex. And as they make their way through turn 4, they'll see the circuit narrow massively to the point where it's only going to be one wide throughout the remainder of the run over the mountain. They'll head through the double right of Quarry Corner, heading continuously uphill through turns 5 and 6. And as they make their way through at turn 7, they'll then go into the triple left-hander that runs to McPhillamy Park at turn number 10, and there we see the speed continues to rise. They charge away to the highest point of the circuit at Skyline, and as they trail break their way over the crest of 11, they'll come down through turns 12, 13 and 14 into the dipper at turn 14, a classic corner, and one we'll expect to see many a driver potentially get it wrong if they haven't got the balance of the car and the grip right. And as they come out of the dipper, they'll charge through turns 15, 16 and 17 into the right-hand kick that precedes Forest Elbow, and there it's all about getting back onto the brakes as soon as possible into the downhill breakings over turn 18, and if you get it wrong on the brakes, there's only one way you're going to go, and that's to the opposite wall. But get it right and they'll charge their way out of Forest Elbow through the kick of 19 and down the Conrod Straight, the longest stretch, as they make their way down towards the Chase chicane at turns 21 and 22. Running through the kick of 20, this is where we expect the major battles to occur, and as they charge through the chicane at 21 and 22, they'll head to Murray's Corner at turn 23 to complete the lap and do it all again. And indeed, with a lap extended of over 6 kilometres, this circuit is going to be a test of stamina, there's no doubt about it. But as our drivers take to the test, let's just give you a reminder of the rules. Of course, we can't go racing without them. And we see with regards to car setup, this is an open setup series. The only thing that is fixed is that car fuel loads are restricted to 45% for all races, and that means in our races it does mandate a pit stop, whether they're a sprint or a feature. In terms of the qualifying, a lone qualifying format shall be used where all of our drivers take to an isolated instance of the circuit. So whilst we do have over 30 drivers in attendance today, in fact to be a bit more specific at the moment, 37 drivers in attendance, we will see that all our drivers take to an isolated instance, and they've got the right to put in 4 laps, 4 fast laps. Alternatively, their session will end within 15 minutes, whichever one occurs first. Now in terms of the sprint race, a race shall commence via a double file rolling start, as is the tradition. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements, but we are expecting our drivers to take on fuel unless somebody can find a magical way to fuel save. Of course, we wouldn't rule it out. No fast repairs are available, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Well, that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between, because as we head back to our live pictures, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. Our times are as follows. In just under 8 minutes time, we'll be heading into our 15-minute qualifying session. That'll be dead on the dot at 8 o'clock this evening, and then after qualifying, we'll be seeing our drivers head onto the grid for the purposes of our sprint race. 45 minutes in duration. It's going to feel like an eternity behind the wheel for all of our drivers, but who will come away the winner? That is the big question here in round 6 of 8 in the GT3 League at season 9. And well, if you're excited, ladies and gents, I can tell you one thing, we definitely are in the commentary booth here, as we do say hello to a good number of you in the YouTube chat, and that does include both the Bad Gamer Zero, who says woohoo, let's go racing, and also Brooker 13 Gaming. Good evening to you, Brooker. I hope you're doing well, and also everyone else who's tuning in right now, perhaps just a little bit shy, who hasn't had the chance to say hi. Don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't buy here at UKSimRacing, and I hope you're having a great weekend. And whilst it is going to be Monday tomorrow, and that does mean for the majority of us we're likely to return to the day job at the same time right now, let's lose ourselves in fantastic sim racing. Of course, we recently did have the Bathurst 12 hour, and that was an absolute thriller all the way to the finish, and my gut instinct says this is going to be just as much a thriller as our drivers attack the Australian circuit. Let's see Damien Lovick coming on down there, missing his braking point entirely, going straight on. The Symphony Esports black driver just missed it and will let the car roll into the gravel. But meanwhile, as we do look to some more of our elite drivers, well, we do give you that recap, of course, earlier on with regards to the battle for the lead in the elite class. But we mustn't count out this man, Matthew Chris, the driver who's looking absolutely sensational at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, flying around the circuit like no other, and in the end really taking the fight to Håkon Grebstad and also what was Daniel Thomas. And it was contact between Chris and Grebstad that cost the two of them major places and really lent the win to what was Daniel Thomas, albeit he had to break away with a lot of pressure from behind. But Chris definitely one of those drivers who seems at the moment to be flying high on a wave of success, and well, we don't want that to stop at any point. But the fastest man in the elite class here in this practice session with only 5.5 minutes to go is the Ignia Motorsport McLaren MP4 12C drivers. We say hello to UKSimRacing there, who is cheering on Ignia Motorsport, saying, let's go Ignia, go tame the mountain. It is Håkon Grebstad as he makes his way down there, albeit a bit of an altercation, I believe, with one of the TKSimsport machines. And well, Grebstad carried on down. He right now does have the momentum on his side in terms of one lap pace, but he doesn't have the momentum for the Nürburgring Grand Prix race last time out, and he'll be looking to arrest that as soon as possible. But as he rolls his way on through, we do also need to introduce a driver who has joined us as of this round. And, well, the name is going to be very familiar to you. It's the privateer of Carl McGurk as he makes his way out of the final corner, out of Murray's and up towards Hell's Corner once again in the 818 car. Of course, those of you who are anoraks to the series, in terms of looking back to, say, Season 7 and Season 8 of the GT3 League, you'll know that Carl McGurk racing in those seasons, albeit he had to stop midway through at Season 8 due to personal circumstances. We're very pleased to see that McGurk has rejoined us as of round at number 6, and well, he'll be competing in the elite class here, and well, we suspect he'll be joining us full time in season 10. Oh, goodness me, I had to remind myself of the count there, the fact we're in season 9 already, and goodness me, how the time has flown with regards to the season. But the race has continued to rise year in, year out, and McGurk has rejoined us as of today. As we say hello as well to Anthony Verdia there, and I hope you're doing well, Anthony. And well, what about in our pro class? Well, we can see at the moment it is John Eddowes is the fastest man of all of them out on circuit by 3.5 tenths out over Peter Cox. And I think for the TKSimsport Gimme driver, when I had the opportunity to catch up with him in the run-up to tonight, he seemed quite confident with regards to bringing things to the table and really focusing right now on bringing that consistency. And he's not too worried about bringing home the win every round. Of course, the wins are nice, but as long as he places consistently, constantly on that podium, I think he feels as though the championship could be his come the very end. So I think he's being a little bit more like Prost compared to Senna, if we're to use the Formula 1 analogy, whereby focusing more on what does he need to do in order to get that championship crown, rather than needing to be the fastest man out of the circuit, lap after lap, round after round. And what's going to be interesting to see, because of course with that 7-point advantage, this is the man who has to play catch up right now. Peter Cox, the UKSimRacing driver, the 68 car, both with the BMW M4 of course, and Cox really does need a big result today in order to narrow that gap down as he rolls his way through McPhillamy Park. But as he comes on through, we do also have in the AM class the consideration of Aaron McGregor here in the AMR machine. Well, of course, the privateer there for AMR, and that is the Aaron McGregor racing outfit as he makes his way down towards the chase. The Audi R8 driver really has been the driver on pace all the way through the season, albeit we can see in this practice session at the moment it's a 1.5 tenth gap between himself and Freight. And Brock Freight, to be fair, when he's found the time, he's been able to really nail it. And well, could he perhaps be a new winner in the AM class today for TKSimsport as he makes his way on down there in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. And we are expecting a little bit of a shake-up here today, of course, because the last time at the Nürburgring we really did get to see that it was the BMW M4 that seems to be a very strong car overall in the field, albeit rumor down in the paddock is we're expecting a McLaren MP4 12C to be the car that's on the ultimate pace, albeit it's going to be very tricky as tyre wear starts to really come into effect in the sprint race. But the Ferraris are expected to be Goliaths down the straight and up the straight, of course, to the mountain, and that may just give the Ferrari drivers a little bit of an edge. And when you think about that, well, there's one name who you'll be thinking about, and that is Mr. Strategy, and that is Daniel Lee, the 188 driver here, always positive with regards to his outlook to races. And we have seen in the Ferrari he's not been shy to save fuel, but also using the top end of that Ferrari to pull off some absolutely phenomenal runs on drivers, alternatively just simply burying the throttle and making sure that nobody's able to catch him. Well, a lot less rear wing typically compared to his peers, and well, if he could do that today, I think he could be on course to bringing home a podium in the elite class, something that eluded him last week, of course, but he won't want it to elude him for too long. We're 1.5 minutes left before we do see the checkered flag brought out in this practice session. We head into qualifying. We also do look to Daniel Pace here, making his way on through the old dudes and cars of the ODC team. And a little bit of a squirm there from our Soul Ford GT. And, well, making his way on around Daniel Pace was Austin William Campbell, who we'll come to shortly, of course, the one and only Ford GT. But Daniel Pace had some difficulty in the previous rounds, but looking to turn that round upside down today and turn it into a smile. And that'll be a big point tool if he's able to pull it off, as we did see that Austin William Campbell losing it coming out to the dipper, and all the infamous corner already claiming another victim in this practice session. We do have a grand total of what is 38 drivers in attendance, 33 times on the board at the moment. And as we do look to our other AM driver of Darren Sharples, well, when I had the opportunity to catch up with Darren in between this round and the previous round, well, he was very happy with how the things have gone overall this season. But I think feeling as though there's a few points still left out there on the table, and the privateer in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo will definitely be thinking about tonight, trying to get a few more points on the board and making things count. And if he can do so, then it may just work out in his favour here, because he is one of the big contenders in the AM class. There's no question about it. He's not perhaps had the results he's wanted so far, and the run of form's just not gone away his way. But as he makes his way up the hill, I can tell you one thing that could go a little bit away to support the UK sim racing community, and that is if you've ever wondered how you could potentially give back or support UK sim racing, given the fact we've been running for a good number of years, and indeed we continue to look to grow year in, year out. Did you know there is a way to do so via our affiliates? So we at UK Sim Racing are affiliated with multiple sim racing and real world motorsport companies, including Swelly Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Sim Lab, our latest affiliate, and Race Anywhere. And if you do head to our website, and that is uksimracing.co.uk, which will pop up on screen very shortly. Well, we don't quite have an affiliates page set up at the moment, but you can see a Discord link in the top right of the screen. And if you do click on that, you'll be redirected to our Discord, which if you ever want to compete in any of our series, you do need to be a member of our Discord, and that is all part of the rules and regulations. And our affiliates do provide a number of discount codes which are available in the UK Sim Racing Discord. And why would you want to use those discount codes, I hear you ask? Well, if you do use them, for you as the consumer, you get a discount on your purchase, and we at UK Sim Racing get a kickback from your purchase. And because we are a non-profit organisation, that means that every penny we receive from affiliate purchases will be invested directly back into the community to help fund future series, including new instalments of the GT3 League, the Porsche Cup, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023. So do keep in mind a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing, but what is going to go a long way right now, and it's going to be a big ask, is a very strong qualifying lap. And as we return to our pictures here, we are now into qualifying. Our drivers are making their way on around, and what we do see Darren Sharples making his way out of the cut through 5 and 6 at the moment, heading on up the hill he goes, and rolling his way now into turn number 7. Now, what does it take here to have a good qualifying lap? Well, it takes a little bit of everything to be, ladies and gentlemen. There's no one thing you look for at Bathurst. The one thing you could argue is that you are the ultimate in terms of the driver. You need to know exactly how wide the car is. You need to know how much speed you can carry from corner to corner over the mountain, how late you can go on the brakes, how aggressive you can be as you trail brake your way down into the dipper, how early you can get on the throttle as you come out of Forest Elbow. It all goes together as we see Daniel Thomas making his way out of the aforementioned corner. And then as well, being bold on the brakes, being able to brake as late as possible in the run down Conrod and up towards the chase chicane, and then carrying the speed all the way through. You've also got to be sensitive to the curbs. The curbs here on the apex of both Murray's Corner, the final corner, and Hell Corner at turn at number 1, they're extremely high compared to your standard racing curbs that you'd see at a circuit such as Silverstone, and therefore those curbs, if you hit them directly with a tyre, they will unsettle the car. They will raise the car up and essentially put it up on 3 wheels for a brief period of time, or even 2 wheels, and those curves are nasty. You can see them there just at the perspective of the camera angle, as we've seen Daniel Thomas make his way out of the chase chicane. And putting all that together, this is really one of those circuits where it's about the driver and the machine being in sequence and in synchronicity, and if they're able to put it together, then the lap times will come on in. Of course, we have recently seen the GT3 lap record here in real life shattered and brought below a 2:01. We saw what was a 2-minute flat 0.6 as set by Mara Engel in the 12 hours of Bathurst qualifying session. While drivers say I'll be looking to try and mimic that and get themselves as close as possible to a 2-minute flat lap. It's not below that. Of course, depending on the simulator. We've seen the simulator, the iRacing simulator, go through a number of physics changes over the years, and I think the lap times will be quite close to that 2-minute mark. But as we see Eric Stegen there making his way across the timeline and heading into turn number 1 in the Ferrari, we'll jump on board for a lap with one of our drivers very shortly. But in fact, we'll be jumping on with, I do believe, not Dion Wren at the moment, he's making his way out the pit lane. In fact, on his initial warm-up lap, we do have a couple of drivers who are heading towards the end of their warm-up laps, including what is David Larson here. here in the 306 machine. Of course, ran for Symphony Esports, but ran in the Ghostbusters machine. And will the ghost of the past couple of rounds he'll be looking to banish away, given the fact he's had some difficulty over the last couple of rounds, but he's the one who can correct them. Of course, it all comes down to driver, as we say hello there to Alan Lever and also Jacob Szymanski, and also I do believe Craig Tillerston there. Good evening to you all. But as we do see Lawson making his way on down Conrad, we have Austin William Campbell heading into the final corner, and we'll be jumping on board with the one and only Ford GT driver as he takes us around for a flying lap of the Bathurst circuit. Making his way out of the final corner and up towards turn number 1, accelerating up through the gearbox here, heading all the way out to 4th gear, and then onto the brakes at 60 metres before corner apex, down to 2nd gear, and immediately back on the power, using the preload differential to kick the car around, and then flat out all the way up the hill. And let's just listen to that lovely Ford engine. Now coming into the depression, it's still uphill, so he'll brake as late as possible for Quarry Corner at turn 2, braking at the 50, but coming all the way down to 3rd gear, down to 86 miles an hour, and immediately back on the throttle, and a fight with oversteer down the rear of the car. And as he heads into the cutting, into turn 3, lift off the throttle, get on the brakes here, brake as straight as possible, and turn it in as tight to the wall. And now power in 2nd gear, get the throttle down, bury it in through 5th, into 6th corner now as he makes his way through the right-handers, and as he comes through turn 6, into 7, in 4th gear, continue to rise up through the gearbox, through 8, now balance the throttle into turn number 9, you want to keep the throttle as much as possible, then make your way into McPhillamy here, it's all about 5th gear, roll the car off the throttle slightly, keep the nose pointed in, and then back on the throttle, and now into Skyline. We start to descend, trail braking over the ridge, down through turn 12, into 13, down to 2nd gear, keeping it tight to the wall, then swinging it into the dipper, onto the throttle now, and full throttle as he spits his way out of here, and coming down into Forest Tower through turn 17, lift off the throttle, down to 3rd gear, trail brake all the way down to the corner apex, staying as close as possible to the inside wall, and getting on the power, let the car fly out, steer clear of the exit wall, and now through the kick of 19 and onto Conrad. If that's not fast up and that's not a roller coaster ride, I don't know what is. And as he makes his way up the rise through Conrad now, up into top gear here and just roaring on down and getting ready for the chase. It's almost complete the lap, but one more heavy braking zone. Whereas he comes through the King of 20 flat out here in 6th gear, 170 miles an hour as he brakes at 125 metres from corner apex. Brings the car nicely for a little bit of a snap oversteer moment, but corrects it nicely in 2nd gear. Up shifts to 3rd and now down towards Murray's corner. Onto the brakes here, looking to his right hand side for his brake marker. Braking at about 70 metres from corner apex, making sure to go for a late apex, avoid the curb. And as he powers out, that is a lap of Bathurst by Austin William Campbell. And that was a 2-minute 3.592. Whilst we are expecting those lap times to go down as this session goes on. A beautiful lap for the Ford GT driver. And indeed, he could be the fly in the ointment for a good many, because one Ford GT driver, and we've seen this Ford has one thing in its arsenal that it does better than everything else, and that is straight line speed, whether it be acceleration or top end. This Ford GT is a menace when it comes to hitting 6th gear. But as he makes his way into turn number 2, we look at those initial times that have come in so far, and will John Edo's pole position in the Pro class provisional, of course. Håkon Grebstad improved to a 202.873, holding on to pole in the elite class, and in the AM class it's Brock Freites at the moment, who is the fastest of everybody by 1.5 tenths over Aaron McGregor. And we did say to watch out for Freites. He did look fast in the practice session, albeit it was this margin that he was behind McGregor. But of course, practice is not a true indicator, because some drivers may be just holding a little bit back in the practice session, just getting their eye in. But Freites, they're going a little bit deep, understeer creeping in, under braking. Of course, if you carry too much speed into that downhill braking zone into Forest Hill, where the car just slides away from you, and there's nothing you can do other than just let the car gradually settle itself down, and then get back on the power. But as he makes his way all the way out towards the chase now, getting ready to break on in. Half this qualifying session almost complete in terms of time, and most of our drivers now coming to the end of their second flying laps out of the 4, so time is ticking down here. And with it, we can see at the moment some of the big surprises. Daniel Thomas, your elite championship leader, only P7 in the elite class, in the pit lane at the moment. I think decided to take a bit of a breather before he makes his way back out, but he'll only have one flying lap left, of course, because they only get one warm-up lap. Any laps they do subsequently out of the pit lane counts as part of their fast laps. But as Freites comes to the timeline, does not improve there, 4 tenths off his previous best. I think a lot of drivers investing in a 2-to-1 lap strategy here, whereby they have the out lap and they do 2 laps on low fuel, then they come into the pits and then they save it all for a single final lap in this qualifying session. As we see Freites making his way out the pit lane there on the timing tower. But meanwhile, Matthew Crisp currently P2, 7 tenths off of Håkon Grebstad, and well, the Ignium Motorsport driver making his way right now down through Forest Elbow. And we have seen Grebstad really has been the one to beat in qualifying pace in recent rounds. And when it's an advantage of 7/10 between himself and Matthew Chris, well, this man right now is working magic as he weaves and waves his way down Conrad here, trying to get a bit more sidewall tyre temperature into the car before he goes on to what will be for him his final qualifying lap of this session. I mean, with an advantage of 7/10, you would imagine that he's already got it said and done, but anything can happen in motorsport, of course. And, well, we could see that at a moment's notice. And speaking of that, Peter Cox, at the moment, who we look to, made his way up towards McPhillamy, currently a 10th off of John Eddowes' pole lap in the pro class. And whilst we have quite a depleted pro class today compared to the other classes, still with what is there are 7 drivers in the 10, still all trying to seize the opportunity of some major points being available as Cox makes his way down through the dipper and heading in towards Forest Elbow shortly. And, well, where can he find a 10th versus Eddowes? That'll be the thing that's on his mind, well, at the moment, as we look to the timings of the screens. We have another screen available which gives us our times. Unfortunately, we can't bring those up for you. We can tell you that really it's over the mountain where the time differential is between the two drivers. Cox just losing little bits of time in the subsectors over the mountain, and it's those little bits of time that are making that 1/10 difference, but there's nothing between them otherwise as he makes his way down towards the chase. Of course, he'll have one more lap available to him as he's currently on his 3rd flying lap. We're heading on down here, and we do look to Adrian Kukulis as he rolls his way on through in the Porsche 911. And we are perhaps expecting the Porsche drivers here to be a little bit of a disadvantage compared to the Pierce, because the Porsche, of course, being one of the cars that's not ideal for straight line speed, and with there being 2 extended straights, the Porsche is going to struggle a little bit. But where it will fly is over the mountain. This car will be very manoeuvrable, much like the McLaren, as it makes its way up to the highest point and comes down through Skyline into the dipper. But you can see here, Kukulis currently 6.5 tenths off of the pole lap set by Brock Freight, the provisional pole lap. And right now, Kukulis getting himself set for one more lap under full attack mode. I think he's just trying to make sure the car is all in rhythm as he rolls his way out there. And of course, the new Porsche 992 Cup GT3 machine arriving on the international motorsporting scene later this year. It'll be interesting to see, but for our drivers, they're running the old 911 GT3 R-Spec as we do see Kukulis heading on down. But meanwhile, Aaron McGregor goes provisional pole in the AM class on a 2:04.450, went purple in class in effect. He was subsectors 3, 5 and 6, and will now 4.5 tenths clear of Brock Freight. I wonder if it could be a potential bit of a white flag moment for Brock Freight in terms of how does he beat that right at the end, albeit he'll try and do everything he can as he makes his way out there. I think there's a bit of contact with the water turn 7, and for Freight, the qualified session is all said and done. As meanwhile, Eric Stegen making his way up towards turn number 10 at the moment. He'll look to try and gain some more time versus Freight, albeit it's half a second between the two of it. It really does look as though our top two in a world of their own in the AM class, and then the rest of the field all trying to play catch up as they roll the way on down. I'm going to tell you one thing right now. The reason why you see the AM class is placed above the Pro class on our time board there is because if we show you the overall standings, our top 33, what you can see there effectively is that Aaron McGregor's AM pole lap at the moment has put him in amongst the elite class. It shows it is P12 overall, and then the pros, it's John Eddowes' provisional pole lap at the moment, the head of the class, which is P17, and that is testament just to how fast the lap is from Aaron McGregor. But as we look back to the individual class standings once again, we can see right now Eric Stegen making his way in towards the braking zone here for the chase chicane. And in terms of lap, in sector times at the moment, not really improved. So I think he's using this lap as a setup lap, and he'll be looking to go for gold one last time as he rolls his way over through. But meanwhile, we're hearing that Adrian Kukulis and Adrian Garcia both in the pit lane for the AMs. So they've decided to call it there. Indeed, they've already done 3 fast laps. They won't have any more they can do. And I think it may be mistakes on their laps that have cost them dear. But meanwhile, Stegen heading across the timeline, and we jump on board here for a flying lap in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. Now coming out to turn number 1 there, second gear, fighting with the steering wheel, but gets the throttle embedded quite nicely. And as he makes his way up the charge here towards turn number 2, well, the Ferrari V8 with its turbo here, working the magic as he makes his way up for a little bit of a weave into the centre of the road there. Perhaps just trying to catch a bit more temperature as he breaks his way into turn 2, down to third gear, goes a little bit deep initially, but collects the car really well there. And as he makes his way out the right-hander of 2, now heading up into the cutting, up into 4th gear, off the throttle here, straight line the car on the brake, down to 2nd, won't drop to 1st, but gets nice and close to the wall on the power, a little bit of step oversteer as he exits there with the road surface bump, and as he makes his way through 5 into 6, full commitment here, stay tight, not too close to the wall, and as he powers through 7, now into the triple left as Daniel Pace promotes to P3 there in the AM class on the 205.193, but Stegen hits the wall, the curve in there, and almost hits the outside wall, but as he makes his way through McPhillamy on the rev limiter there for 4th gear, deciding not to go to 5th as he now brings his way down through Skyline and into the dipper here. And this lap has definitely been full attack mode, but is it going to be enough as he heads on through the dipper now into turns 15, 16, 17 he goes as Frank Klein sets a purple sector in the AM class in subsector 5. But as we continue to watch Dagan, he goes a bit deep and he just hits the wall. Goodness me, and he's going to carry on all the same. But that lap is definitely now one that is in ruins as he was on a personal best in subsectors 1 and 2, but just drifted a little bit deep there into Forest Elba, and that goes to show you how hard he was pushing the lap. And already now as he makes his way down with that aerodynamic damage, you can see losing that top end speed and now losing his delta as a result, and that is a lap that is not going any further. And Eric Stegen in the end, we started P5 at best in the AM class, as we do see Casper Brotner making his way on through there from Philly into Skyline. But meanwhile, as he heads his way on down the mountain, we look to Sean Valandia in the Tiki Simsport machine, making their way all the way down towards the chase right now. Currently P4 on their final qualifying lap here. And well, in terms of the times they've got available at their disposal, well, we can see Peter Cox there completing their qualifying session, not improving versus John Eddowes, who has improved in the Pro class to raise the provisional pole bar to a 204.779. But meanwhile, Sean Valandia definitely going on a fast lap so far, with the fact currently P4, albeit this lap in particular, where it's not too much of an improvement, only improved subsector 2. And as he makes his way down towards the final corner here, I think it's not going to be much of an improvement for that P4 position. But to be fair, to be P4 and only what is 200th, if that, in fact 100th really, of Austin William Campbell's P3 lap, I think that's a huge achievement. And Sean Valandia across the line there, and no further improvement from the McLaren driver. As we look to Daniel Thomas, who decides, well, it's not going to work out, goes to the jump over the tyre barrier there, and well, just does not quite catch it. I think a bit of frustration kicking in with the qualifying session, and decided to line up the practice jump over the wall early. You'll see more of that at the end of the race today. And meanwhile, Daniel Lee making his way out of the final couple of corners and into the pit lane, going no further. Qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen, and now it is time for our drivers to make the way to the grid for the purposes of today's race. So this is how they line up then for round 6 of 8 here today at the Bathurst Circuit. It is Håkon Grebstad who takes pole position overall and in the elite class for Ignium Motorsport by 3.5 tenths over Matthew Crisp. On row number 2, it's Austin William Campbell for Civic Esports Black, joined by Sean Valandia from Tiki Simsport Kimi. And on the 3rd row, it's Damien Lovitt for Civic Esports Black, joined by the privateer of Carl McGuirk. On his debut, P6, a good start to his campaign. Daniel Thomas from ProTech Motorsport and Daniel Lee make up your 4th row, with the top 10 being completed by Dean Powell and ProTech Motorsport's Ryan Moles. That is all elite drivers, of course. Martin Tillin from Tiki Simsport Copa starts off our 6th row, joined by Cy Anthony. And on row number 7, it's the pairing of Aaron McGregor and Stephen Masters. Aaron McGregor, your AM pole sitter there, with an absolutely stellar time, and pipping Stephen Masters to the post there. The Tiki Simsport Toa driver, however, being one step ahead of the 8th row, which is made up of SimAm Racing Blues Nathan Foster, joined by SimAm Racing Reds Joe Newman. On the 9th row, we have your pro pole sitter of John Eddowes for Tiki Simsport Kimi, joined by 2nd place in the AM class of Brock Freites for Tiki Simsport, and then completing at the top 20 is Peter Cox of UKSimRacing and Old Dudes in Cars Daniel Pays. Michael Warrington for Tiki Simsport Car Marte starts P21 on what is there the 11th row, and he's joined by Eric Stegen in P22. And then on the 12th row, we have Old Dudes in Cars Casper Brotner being joined by Team Azor's Adrian Garcia. Followed up on what is the 13th row, we see the pairing of what is there Adrian Kukulis being joined by UKSimRacing's Chris Eddersford, and there is Darren Fellows of BDM Racing who starts off our 14th row being joined by Frank Klein. The Tiki Simsport Copa driver ahead of the 15th row, which is made up of UKSimRacing's Mark Johnson and Simon Hartley for Tiki Simsport Copa. They complete your top 30 with Matt Maddox of BDM Racing and Darren Sharples line up of row 16. Row 17 goes to Team Zor's Richard Curie, being joined by Thomas Barjuk. And then we have James Connolly being joined by Dion Wren on the 18th row. Dion Wren not getting a time on the board, and in fact starting for the pit lane as we're to understand it. And then on our final 2 rows, we have Nathan Scott joined by his fellow pro driver David Larson, respectively SimAm Racing Blue and Civic Esports White. And then starting last but not least, P39, it is Ben Watkinson for the back of the grid, but still, we know what could happen here, and with that, anything is possible for the back of the field. But as our drivers make the way on through, we look to the blimp camera at the moment. The pack is gradually making its way around with this partial formation lap. But as we come a little bit closer to our drivers, it's Håkon Grebstad who will be taking us to the green for 45 minutes of racing here at Mount Panorama Raceway very shortly. he makes his way out the final corner, he immediately goes green there. Håkon Grebstad gets the jump on Matthew Crisp, and Crisp under pressure immediately into turn one from Austin William Campbell as they head onto the brakes here into Hill Corner, and as they roll the way through the left-hander, Austin William Campbell gets the job done initially, but that's a drag race uphill. You can see Grebstad just putting the car in the middle of the road, offering equal toe to both drivers, as we've got a couple of drivers around there, including what I do believe maybe Casper Brotner in the back of the picture, but as all our drivers brawl the way on through, making the way up towards turn number 2. Meanwhile, you can see Joe Newman and Stephen Masters sharing the same space here as they make the way to the braking zone. Masters on the inside, Newman on the outside on the right of your picture, and as they head into the right-hander at turn number 2, Newman trying to go all the way round, and they just about get it done to Joe Newman as he rolls his way into P14 for SimRacing Red, but more still to come further back as we see Matt Maddox here still ahead of David Larson as they head in towards the cutting for the first time of asking. Casper Brotner was definitely involved in that incident. He's had to be towed to the pits, and meanwhile James Scott a little bit further behind there, will lose in a bit of ground early on, but trying to make some gains versus Nathan Scott as Ben Watkinson tucks in behind there, and will the majority of our drivers have made this open lap. Dion Wren started for the pit lane. We've only had one driver who's had to be towed to the pits, and that is Casper Brotner so far in this open lap. But now as our drivers make their way over the mountain, this is where things really start to get difficult. It's cold tyres and cold brakes and a very challenging sequence of corners on the opening lap. You've got to be calm, you've got to be collected, you've got to be consistent here. And as they make the way on down, what we can see, Matthew Crisp getting ahead there. Oh, Austin William Campbell, they're battling side by side into Forest Elbow, and as they come on through, Matthew Crisp gets the move done. Austin William Campbell there with a little bit of snap oversteer and corner exit. Now exposed to Sean Valandia as they make the way down Conrad for the first time of asking. And now this is where we'll see the Ford GT try to deploy its ultimate weapon as they make the way in the toe there. Valandia bring it onto the outside of the road, covering off the inside for what will be the chicane. And as they power the way down, will Campbell look for the return move? He goes for it, he looks up the inside, Valandia does not cover it off. On the brakes they go, and as they come on through, he gets it done, or does he? No, he goes deep, and Austin William Campbell's off onto the grass. He rejoins, but he loses 4 places for his tenacity. But meanwhile, coming on through, that is Daniel Lee, and also Daniel Thomas as Lee gaining places. Dean Powell on the inside of William Campbell as they make the way into the final corner at the end of this first lap, and as they exit the way out, they make the way to lap number 2. It's Grebstad who leads by an advantage of 2.6 seconds over Matthew Crisp, followed by Sean Valandia in P3. We then have Damien Lobb at P4, ahead of Carl McGuirk at P5, and as they make the way up the hill once again, Daniel Lee a bit further back behind Carl McGuirk in P6, Daniel Thomas P7, Dean Powell P8, Ryan Moles P9, Cy Anthony P10, Best the rest in P11, Austin William Campbell, that's overall in the elite class. Aaron McGregor is still your AM leader in the P13 at the moment, not gaining or losing on the opening lap as they make the way up the hill once more. You can see Ryan Moles here, having to defend hard versus Cy Anthony, covering off the inside into turn 2. Cy Anthony there under pressure of Austin William Campbell. William Campbell's lost a lot of places, but now he's coming back as they make the way up towards turns 3 and 4. In the raw they come on through, but now it's one wide once again as they break the way to the cut. If you go too wide here, you've got to have a lot of faith and commitment in the driver next to you. But as they make the way out into turns 5 and 6, rolling the way up the hill, both drivers here doing everything they can to pressure one another. Meanwhile in the pro class, it is still John Eddowes who leads the class ahead of Peter Cox, but you can see the gap between the two of them negligible at 6/10 here. That's worth the run down the straight, and as they make the way up towards McPhillary Park, well, there's not been too much of an exchange between the two leaders in the pro class, but there's been a lot of exchange further back as we can see here. Frank Clyde trying to put pressure onto Chris Edison, who's going a little bit slowly, making the way through McPhillary. But meanwhile, we've got an incident here. Oh goodness me, what on earth has happened? We see Adrian Garcia coming past the scene of an incident. A lot of drivers going slowly, coming down into what is there, the dipper, and I believe Cy Anthony involved in a major moment. Of course, all the drivers have been told if they do have an incident after turn 2, but before what is Forest Elbow turn 18, they are required to immediately tow to the pits. They are not permitted to try and turn the car around on circuit. They have to tow due to safety concerns. Of course, it's so narrow. If somebody has an incident at a dipper, for example, and the whole field coming on through, if they can't react to it, it is going to be carnage. And that's the last thing we want, of course, for our drivers as they continue to make the way on around here. With Cy Anthony having a major moment over the mountain. Well, we will get a replay of that very shortly. In fact, one's coming up right now. He made his way through McPhillary, the car drifted slightly. Oh goodness me, the rear coming loose and going straight across, and who was collected with that? We're trying to see, I believe that was Martin Tilling who got caught up but brought the car down the hill when then he couldn't stop the car, of course, with all the field coming through. You can see everybody having to react to Tilling, and in the end Martin Tilling just getting out of the way there and parking the car off the road surface. But a nasty incident for Cy Anthony, and Martin Tilling unfortunately just literally giving us an example of what we're saying. When it goes wrong on the mountain, everybody behind, if they cannot react in time, they will all immediately start to fall victim to what's happened in terms of circumstance. But meanwhile, speaking of one driver right right now. Well, after a difficult start, trying to remake some ground. Adrian Kukulis here battling side by side with Richard Curie. Oh, but you can't see Curie at the moment. He's obscured a little bit by Thomas Barshak's Audi as they make the way through. Curie on the inside, Kukulis on the outside as they make the way up towards turn number 2. Kukulis tucking back in, it looks like here, with Curie covering him off as they roll the way to the right-hander. Kukulis there just not quite got the straight line speed. The Porsche does not have it compared to the Ferrari, but it came close. As they head their way up into the cut-in, Barshak looking around the outside of Sharples. He goes to the move, and Sharples not putting up too much of a defence there. And I think Sharples with some wounds to the car, maybe trying to limp the car on home, because it looks so. Kukulis right now still side by side with Curie here as they make the way through 5 and 6. The two drivers not backing off, and this is where you do not go too wide, but they're going to do it. Kukulis is on the inside, coming into turn 8, and surely Curie's got to back off here. And indeed, he does not want to, but he relents in the end. And Adrian Kukulis being absolutely stubborn as a mule. But who can blame him there for wanting to get the move done? And he's made it count as he moves up to P12 in the AM class. Brilliant manoeuvring there for Adrian Kukulis. To be fair, Richard Curie giving him the right amount of space and respecting the speeds they could versus what they couldn't carry through the corners. But that's exactly the way we want to see the racing. And meanwhile, we look from them to a little bit further up the road to Frank Klein, who continues to try and hound his way past Chris Edison here for an exchange for overall position. Albeit keep in mind, points are only awarded based on class finishing position, not overall position. But Clyde here will have to run around the outside into 20 and coming onto the brakes here for the chase. He'll get it done versus Edison, who doesn't put up too much of a fight here. And I think both drivers respect to the fact they're in different classes, therefore in different races in their minds. But as they make their way out towards the end of the lap, meanwhile we look back up towards the leaders here as we do see Matthew Crisp right now falling away from the Håkon Grebstad, leading the run from P2 down to what is P7 there, as Daniel Thomas is at the back of this group of 6 drivers. But as they make the way up towards turn number 2, Crisp and Valandia both trying to break away here and get some advantage and ground over the rest of their peers. But as they roll the way out to 2, of course, they get too close to one another, fight one another too hard. They may just end up pushing themselves backwards to the likes of Damien Lovett and Carl McQuirk. And speaking of Carl McQuirk, he's had a brilliant start to today in terms of qualifying, line up on the 3rd row of the grid. He's gained 1 place so far, and as he makes his way on through turns 5 and 6, he's well in the fight here for a top 5 finish, if not for looking at a potential podium. But as he makes his way on through into turn number 7, we do take a look back at what happened on the opening lap between a couple of drivers, and in particular between Casper Brotner and Adrian Kukulis. This was at the very start of the race. Now you're looking at Casper Brotner in the white Ferrari there. Kukulis going to the inside. Oh, goodness me. And there was a lot of contact there as set off by the Team Zor machine of Adrian Garcia. So both Brotner and Kukulis both in a bit of a shunt there. And well, it all came together with Garcia just giving a small tap to the rear of Brotner's car. It turned Brotner into the side of what was Kukulis. And that's how it all played on out as we return to the live pictures. A nasty moment. And for Casper Brotner, that's not going to help his championship aspirations whatsoever, given the fact that he was really hoping today, of course, to put in another major result. But also, what happened to Darren Fellows on the open lap? We saw him have to be towed, and here's the explanation. As he made his way down at the skyline into the dipper, my gut feeling says the car's going to go round here at some point. On the brakes he came on through, and the rear just snaps loose, and well, having to try to hold the brakes, and everybody having to split the seas around him. Goodness me. Well, very quick reaction time there to get towed to the pits. But as we return to the live pictures, well, of course, there are a couple of drivers getting it wrong early on, but others are finding a way on through. Speedway's just found a way on through. Frank Klein here making ground on Michael Warrington, going very slowly there in the run into the chicane. And of course, you are looking at live pictures now down to P6 in the AM class. Michael Warrington, has he got damage to the car? He's really struggling here as David Larson comes on through as well, albeit perhaps we could argue Larson there being let through because he's a pro versus the AM driver, but we wouldn't normally expect to see Warrington just let in what was Frank Klein go there. Klein is absolutely flying, it must be said. But as they make their way into turn 1, Klein then the TE6 got the BMW on the outside, and well, Chris Edisford trying to get the place back overall here, but in doing so, the problem with this is now he's left himself open to David Larson, because of course when you battle through turn 1 you lose straight line speed. And as they make their way up the hill, well, you can see here Edisford, as much as he might be willing to push Klein along, Larson's got the inside run here, and it's only going to go one way as they make their way to turn 2, and that is Larson will hold track position. I thought there was going to be contact there between Larson and Klein for a bit, but Larson backing out just in time. And as they make the way into the cut-in here with David Larson making the key pass, which he's got ahead of Chris Edison for P5 in the pro class as they make the way into turns 5 and 6. But as they roll the way up the hill now and charge on through, we jump on board here with Chris Edisford in the McLaren MP412C to give you an exposure of what it looks like when you're under race conditions here going over the mountain and trying to chase down a rival. Now keep in mind, of course, Edison will be experiencing the loss of front end downforce as he makes his way through the left of Villamy Park here, and that is frustrating because you don't have as much bite on initial entry into the corner, and therefore you've got to shave off some speed. And coming down to the braking zone here, the Cole wants to understeer away from you very slightly more than it normally would under braking, but Edison manages it with aplomb, and as he heads down into turn number 17, Forest Elbow, of course, as well, just carried a little bit more speed in the charge and just goes overly deep there. He catches it just in time, but that's going to cost him a couple of attempts as he now builds up the speed of the run down Conrad, and you can see Lawson in the Ferrari just bolting away as they make the way up towards turn 21. As they come roaring on through, we look up the road to Brock Wright, who are battling here with Eric Stegen and trying to hold on to P2 in the AMP class, with Aaron McGregor being 7.2 seconds up the road. But I think right now for Freight, it's all about just trying to hold on for that run for the second spot on the podium, unless of course McGregor has a moment where he starts to lose the pace, albeit currently we would argue that Aaron McGregor does seem to be in a world of his own when it comes to AMP class pace here at the Australian circuit. As they head across the timeline, 10 minutes complete, we've still got 35 to go, and no signs of pit stops yet. We'd normally expect our pit stops to kick off around what is the 17 to 18 minute mark for those drivers who are trying to be crafty with the undercut strategy, and the pit stops will go all the way up to about the 37th minute for what we've seen. But right now it's not about strategy, it's about track pace, and we can see Eric Stegen looking up the inside as they make the way into turn number 2. Freight's on the outside, he's going to try and beat him on the brakes, but in the end Stegen goes on through and moves up into P2 in the AMP class. The classic move on the run into the right-hander, but as they head up towards the cutting now for what is going to be Eric Stegen, it's all about hammer time and seeing if he can close the gap to Aaron McGregor, albeit the one thing he'll have to deal with as part of that is the fact that there is 5 cars between himself and McGregor, and that is the combination of the 2 pros of John Eddowes and Peter Cox, and what is there, the 3 elites of Nathan Foster, Joe Newman and Stephen Masters. Speaking of Nathan Foster, we can see here the Simrad Racing blue driver in a little bit of an awkward situation, being chased by the Simrad Racing red driver of Joe Newman. Of course, they're both at Simrad Racing, but they're in rival outfits for the individual team. And as they make the way down in towards Forest Elbow here, I wonder whether they'll battle it too hard or whether they may decide, if one's impeding the other, to swap the drivers on around here for the sim. Oh, goodness me, I think it's going to be a bit of a quick swap now with Nathan Foster losing the rear of the car. They're coming out of Forest Elbow, just a brief slide, and the rear right taking an absolute hammer in there with regards to contact to wall. But look at this, Newman's just not able to get the run until he takes the draft here, and I think that goes to show how much rear wing Newman may be running, because he's still struggling despite the fact that Foster had a really poor run off the corner where he's got damage on that rear right. He's definitely going to be mindful of that, because the rear right suspension will not want to be as compliant through the what is the left hand corners. But meanwhile, Austin William Campbell off there on the grass, going deep again at the chicane as we understand it, and Nathan Foster and Newman both making the way through, and William Campbell not being given room there by looks of things. Oh goodness, been a brief tap there from what was, I do believe, Stephen Masters. William Campbell reverses off circuit, but it's a frustrating way to spend the opening 15 minutes of his race, going down the order. I think there he could have been given a little bit more room, but meanwhile, coming from that instant between elites to drivers in the pro class, we can see here John Eddowes under pressure now from his rival Peter Cox. Of course, these two battling for the lead of the championship, and as they make the way up the hill, we jump aboard the gearbox here of the Tiki Sinsville Kimberley driver as he makes his way into the next corner. As they charge their way up the hill, of course, Eddowes will have the toe of Stephen Masters in front. Peter Cox takes a little bit of a peek to the inside there, just trying to get in the mind of Eddowes, trying to unsettle and think that he might be trying to make the move from far back. But as they now head into the cutting, of course, this is where the moves stagnate. There's no real opportunity here. All that Peter Cox could do is look to get closer and closer and get the run out of Forest Elbow to get the charge all the way down into the chase from Conrad. But of course, the one thing that Eddowes will be hoping that he's able to do is stay within a second of Stephen Masters in front, for the simple reason that will give him the toe he needs in order to neutralise the slipstream advantage that Peter Cox will get by default as they make the way into Conrad. But charging away from him at Villamy, you can see now how Cox backing off here, and I think not feeling too comfortable about running within a half a second of the rear of his fellow BMW driver. And I think that dirty air just started to take off the front end edge of the UKSimRacing machine as they come down through the dipper and now head their way into Forest Elbow once again. But what's very telling here as well is notice how in that dirty air, Peter Cox is really having to turn the car in early after breaking a brief graze with the wall there. It's not going to cost him too much time in terms of aerodynamic damage, but I think for Cox he's really just not comfortable running in that dirty air, and it means that every corner he approaches, he is having to tuck the nose into the quarter apex, and that's not ideal. You ideally do want to be able to take that more natural racing line, because when you've got a tighter line on entry, it means you can carry less speed to that late apex approach. But meanwhile, we see the battle for P2 in the AM class rage on here between Eric Stögen and what is their Brock Freights. They made the way through the chicane and head up towards Murray's corner here, and will right now the privateer keeping the Tiki SimSport driver at bay. But it does look as though between the two of them, it comes down to each and every straight as to who is leading in this battle. Aaron McGregor now opened up that lead to 9 seconds almost over the pair, and I think they are entwined in their own little battle for the remainder of this race. Albeit I say that as if the race is coming to its close. We've still got 30 minutes of racing action to go, but when you do have a 9-second advantage and strategy still to play out here, I think Aaron McGregor may just feel as though the cards are turning in his favour, because he could make a mistake at any time. Albeit we don't want to put the commentator's curse on him or any of our drivers, as we see here the battle for P2 calming down for a brief moment. But meanwhile, one battle for P2 that seems to be starting to boil over very gradually is that between our elite drivers of Matthew Crisp, who leads in the P2 position ahead of Sean Belady and Damien Lobbit. And we can see here the two BMW drivers sandwiching the McLaren MP412C as they head up towards Skyline, rolling their way down here, and as they couple through into Dipper. Kills the BMW's embodying stability here. The one that the BMW's known for is a bit of a boring car, our drivers would argue, in terms of the fact it doesn't wobble on its rear end as much as, say, the McLaren by comparison, and indeed perhaps the McLaren being one of the more adventurous car, if you were to use those adjectives. But at the same time, with that stability comes a greater tenacity and consistency to attack the mountain, perhaps, as they make the way on down towards the Covent Straight. But meanwhile, Sean Belady getting ever closer through the corners, but it's on the straights here where you can see the BMW is just able to inch open that gap enough that whilst he's in the tow, he's not gaining enough. But of course, what the McLaren driver can do here is opt to do some fuel save, do a little bit of lift and coast into the corner, and some short shifting up through the gearbox. The slipstream will offset the time, but as he makes his way on out of the corner, we look back here to Nathan Foster and Joe Newman, who have swapped places. We talked about this potentially happening, and now Joe Newman up into P10 in the elite class, which is P11 overall, as they head into the braking zone here for the chase chicane. Meanwhile, behind Stephen Masters on the back of this battle, P12 in the elite class, albeit for Masters. The challenge he's got here is he's got John Enos closed up behind him. Masters is going to cover the inside of the road here, and I think the two Tiki SimSport drivers for different parts of the Tiki SimSport machine, as they make the way out here. Stephen Masters goes a bit deep, and with that is going to enable both Enos and Peter Cox to come on through. But as they make the way up towards turn number 1 here, into left hand they go. Now the thing that Enos may be a little bit worried about is the next closest car is 1.4 seconds away. He'll get a distant tow, but it's not going to be worth anywhere near as much compared to what it would be if it was 7 tenths away. And now Cox can start to push the tempo here and look for that potential move. Meanwhile, drag racing the way up towards turn number 2 as well. Up the mountain straight as it's done. David Larson outrunning what is there, Frank Klein, in different classes the two of them. This is for overall position, albeit I think Klein would love to come back to go chasing after Adrian Garcia, who we can see there just in the foreground coming past our camera shot. But as they make the way up towards the cutting now, with David Larson holding on to that position. See Clyde taking another peek there, but onto the racing line. I think trying to say to Lewison, look, if you're not going to get a move on, would you politely mind letting me have the place back, because I want to go hunting after P4 in class today. But I think Larson has other ideas here in terms of trying to chase down the top 2, albeit the gap between himself and Cox is a margin now of what is then 9 seconds, albeit just shy. And as they make the way over the mountain here, I think it's for Cox and Enos to battle one another, that Lewison will start to come back into that fight late on. As they charge the way on around here, we say hello to Martin Tillin in the YouTube chat, and also to Phil Mayer, who clarifies that Eden Frazina's graphics card has broken and also a little bit under the weather. I believe Andrew McGovern clarified as well. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for letting us know about Eden. I do hope he's doing as well as he can, and we wish him a speedy recovery. We do look forward to seeing him return at some point this season, or if not, in the next season, because he's definitely a much valued member of the AM group. I can tell you that. He's being missed down in the paddock. But meanwhile, as the drivers continue to press on here, we have had a change of position up front. And we can see here in the battle for P2, it is now what is Crisp, Lobbit, Vladia and Lee. And Vladia dropping behind Lobbit. And how exactly did that move happen, I hear you ask? Well, here it is. As they made their way up the mountain straight, looking up the inside there, Damien Lobbit and Vladia not responding to it. So in fact, getting caught out there and almost understeering to the wall. And Daniel Lee being able to catch up to this group as a result of that mistake. As they made their way into the cuts in there, definitely now the two BMW drivers up front of this group will try and break away. But if Vladia can stay closer, he's brought Daniel Lee in, and now it's a four-way fight for P2 rather than a three-way fight. But as they head into the next corner, indeed onto another lap, we can also tell you that Mark Johnson's had a bit of a difficult day with regards to the way the racing has gone. And in fact, Mark Johnson down in P23 here as the Mercedes AMG Evo driver UK Sim Racing builds up the speed once again. But he's dropped down to P7 in the AM class, and what exactly has happened? Well, this was only moments ago, heading down into Forest Elbow, and as he came through turn number 17 on the brakes here, and goes a little bit deeper, the car snaps, and it's a tap to the wall there, which puts him back in the right direction, but for Johnson then, not the way he wanted it to go, and that rear damage is definitely going to hurt him through left-hand corners now. But as we return to the live pictures here, Johnson making his way up towards another lap, and meanwhile a bit further back, we see James Conley here on the charge after Thomas Marjuk in the battle for P11 in the AM class with his P27 overall. And looking on the inside here, the Ferrari having the straight line speed, but can Marjuk look for the run on the brakes here? I think Conley's going to get this done. He takes an incredibly tight line, however, but his rival respects the fact he's there, and James Conley gets the move done, moves up into P11 in class. But now Nathan Scott trying to come through, albeit Nathan Scott with what is a very difficult day of racing, albeit he's gained a lot of places after a difficult qualifying session, up to what is already at P29 overall, P5 in the pro class. Show no signs of slowing down, but he's going to have to slow down a little bit here as Dion Red makes his way through and gets the P5 off him. I think there for Nathan Scott, just a bit of difficulty with regards to trying to find his way past Marjuk, and in return, Dion Red just capitalised there and taking P5 back in the pro class. But as they come through the left hand here on Philippi Park, they settle down for the time being, and we do look up to Adrian Garcia, the Team Zor driver from Spain, who right now in the 84 Ferrari. Got David Larson still behind him. Larson has caught up and broken away from Frank Clyde, and I think for Garcia he's got to be tactical here and think what is the bigger picture, which is Clyde is 1.1 seconds behind as they make the way towards the final corner. And the thing for Garcia is he's not racing Larson, he's laced the Tiki SimSport driver behind, and he can't afford really to lose too much time as he goes a bit deep there into Murray's corner, and Larson gets the run, albeit I think a bit of an unexpected moment for Larson there as he pokes his way out onto the inside here of Hell's corner, and Garcia just needs to back out a little bit here, but he doesn't, and as a result this is going to cost the pair of them a lot of time now. And in fact, look at Klein, he's literally soared off the corner, and now as they make the way out, well, Garcia flashing his lights there, a little bit frustrated with the way that's played out, but not for Frank Klein. He's going to be smiling from ear to ear for the simple reason he's also been given the toe of Larson as they make the way out the hill. It's going to be the Ferrari of what is their Garcia, who's going to defend as much as possible, and the straight line speed of the Ferrari making itself announced on the scene, and Klein cannot make it count as they come out of 2 and up towards 3 right now. Just how strong that Ferrari is on a straight, and Garcia, despite the difficulty, still holding up to P4 in the AM class at this time. And as they make the way out to the cutting, well, Klein, well, he's going to give it everything, but I think that may be an opportunity that has been wanted for some time, and he's lost it as they make the way out to 6 and into 7, because now he's definitely going to put Garcia under a lot of pressure here to find another attempt at the pass. But as they make the way in towards McPhillips Park here for what is for them the 11th time of asking. We look back to your race leader here, Håkon Grebstad, and that's over on the elite class, and the man is absolutely driven just to run away with this race right now. 8.5 seconds clear of Matthew Crisp, and well, to put that in perspective, this is what it looks like from a camera perspective in terms of the fact that Crisp only just reaching the chase chicane as Grebstad's almost already through the apex of what is there the final corner. But as they come down towards turn number 23 in this battle for P2, we can see Crisp, Lobbit, Valendia and Daniel Lee not letting one of a go, all separated by half a second each. So it is effectively only waits 2 seconds separated the battle from P2 through to P5. But as they head on to the next lap here, all in equal pace, I think Crisp now really starting to nestle in here and think about the strategy. And that's the thing for this group of 4. They've got to now start really playing the game. It's right, we're in a bit of a stalemate. We can't make the move happen on circuit unless somebody makes a mistake or a major error at some point. But what can I do? And that is, I've got to save fuel, and I've got to find a way to leapfrog in the pits. But of course, none of them want to pit yet, and the reason for that is they are waiting for pit stop season to commence further down the order, where you just see the majority of the field coming in, and we are seeing that in the AM class already, with Eric Steigen into the pit lane, also Brock Freights and Adrian Garcia. Meanwhile, Klein and McGregor stay out. We've also got Warrington staying out as well, but it's a good number of AM drivers. But meanwhile, oh goodness me, and that's Damien Lobbit into the wall at the cutting. What happened to the 4th place driver? With that running third at the time, we should correct ourselves there, making his way up into the cutting here and having to fend off Valendia and lose in the rear under braking there, and a major shunt to the wall. And well, from Sean Valandia's perspective, what exactly did that look like? 'Cause that looked a nasty moment. With that, as we look back to Sean Valandia on board, Was there a tap there? There was a tap to the rear of Damien Lobbett's car, and Valandi having to settle the car, and that explains what happened. And in the end, Valandi having to try and stop the car to avoid going into the back of Lobbett and making the damage even worse. Daniel Lee, meanwhile, coming on through there. Well, that's not the way anybody wanted it to go, but a nasty moment, and with it, Damien Lobbett's race has definitely been severely undermined today. But as he parks up there in the pits and waiting for the repair work on the toe, of course, we look back to our drives out on circuit, and will that battle for the top two, the P2 position has now definitely come to a halt, with Matthew Crisp 9.5 seconds off of our race leader here, but Crisp in return 3 seconds clear of Daniel Lee, who's found himself up into P3. But as they roll the way on around right now, we do look to Peter Cox, who is trying to make his way past Nathan Foster. And will the pro leader here trying to make as many elite drivers act as a little bit of a defensive barrier versus John Eddowes. And do keep in mind that Eddowes has been really patient in this race so far. We haven't really seen Eddowes trying to make any major moves, but in fact we should point out that Peter Cox has got ahead of Eddowes. That's something we haven't observed until now. And well, how exactly did that move occur is the big question you may be wondering. Well, we are going to get a replay of that just now. It was in the run up towards turn 2, and Cox on the inside there. Eddowes side by side, a little bit of a tap between the two, a bit of a door bang as they made the way out of the corner. Well, Eddowes tried to keep it into the cutting, but he couldn't find it, and in the end, well, he backed out, and Peter Cox got the move done there. And well, a nice move from the UKSimRacing driver, and that is the lead which he's been craving as we return to live pictures. It's only 1.2 seconds between the two of them, but now Eddowes will know if he wants to come back here, he's definitely going to have to try and light the fire in terms of pace. But I think Peter Cox may already be starting to up the tempo before the pit stops and try to put in some qualifying laps in order to break open enough a gap. There's not going to be a concern on the strategy in terms of the two of them swapping around once again as they make the way into the cut-in this time round on lap number 13, as we do across the threshold for the halfway point of this race distance, and they make the way into the second half. We've got plenty of pit stops still unfolding, including Frank Klein, who's in the pit lane here, down in P8 in the AM class. Darren Sharple's also in, and also at James Connolly, all being serviced here as they wait to be released. But meanwhile, with all that happening, we look to Nathan Scott, who continues yet to take a pit stop, of course, to rise up through the order now to P22 as he heads in towards turn number 2. The iRacing blue driver here letting what is there Adrian Garcia go, and of course aware I think of the fact that Garcia's already taken a pit stop. So from the perspective of Nathan Scott, what's the point fighting him when he's yet to take a pit stop, in the fact that racing in different races here on the strategy. So Nathan Scott showing great awareness here in terms of who he needs to fight and who he doesn't need to fight. But of course at the same time, by lifting off there, he will cost himself some overall race time, perhaps a lot less. But meanwhile, whilst he's making his way over the mountain at the very bottom of the footfalls, into the pits of the leader of this race in the elite and overall categories, Håkon Grebstad comes on in, and then Matthew Crisp just behind, and also Daniel Lee here as they all make the way on through. Sean Valandi rolling up towards his pit box, and now with the pit stops for effect, Colin McGurk coming in from P5 here and just enjoying this race. But things have calmed down a little bit in terms of battles out on circuit. We haven't got too many battles ongoing at the moment, as we do see there. I believe that is when we see Daz there, and hello to you, Daz. I think that is in reference to what is Darren Fellows talking about, a potential meatball flag on the car and therefore being disqualified from this race, which if so, that is very unfortunate. I'm very sorry to hear that. But at the same time, with regards to those iRacing flags, they do catch us out in terms of when they don't appear. And well, if it is a glitch with iRacing, of course, we can put that down to perhaps a technical issue with the car in real world motorsport, but not the way anybody wants it to go, as Ryan Moles carries on to another lap here. And of course, Moles, in terms of strategic stakes, has already taken one pit stop as he heads on through turn number 1, and up the hill he goes. And once again, the ProTech Motorsport driver back out ahead of Joe Newman, who we see there leaving the pit lane, just staying within the pit lane exit just about. But Newman here in a bit of a drag race with Nathan Foster, of course keeping in mind that Foster pitted before Newman. And as they head on up towards turn number 2, well, the two iRacing drives, one for blue, one for red, you can discern the colours on them. And as they make the way in towards the next braking zone, we can see Foster back ahead here on strategy, and Newman will look to try and come through once again as they roll the way on out. Meanwhile, in the battle between Eddowes and Peter Cox, Eddowes has got it done on strategy. He's back ahead of Cox as they make the way into the cutting once more. And this battle for the pro win is going to go down to the wire as they roll the way through turn number 4 and 5 and 6. And we also say hello to Ben Hicks and Simon Anthony there. And Ben Hicks commented on the fact that Håkon Grebstad is such a weapon around the Bathurst circuit. And with regards to Bathurst 12 hours, well, it is the case that with the two teammates being taken out in the official Bathurst 12 hours, I think Grebstad looking for redemption is what Ben Hicks says. And I think you're right, Ben, as Meanwhile, going a little bit wide there, going into Skyline out of Villa, but you can see Cox right now doing everything in his power as we jump aboard here with the number 68 car in trying to take the win in the Pro Class here. And of course, both drivers looking for their second win of the season. Neither of them, and indeed no driver in the Pro Class, has yet to become a repeat winner. We've had 5 winners in 5 rounds. Are we going to see a 6th winner in 6 rounds? I doubt it today, unless we see these two take one another off. Of course, we do not want to see that whatsoever. Let's be 100% clear on that. And David Larson, if he was to inherit the lead of this class, would become the 6th winner in 6 races. But right now, Peter Cox really doing everything. He got ahead on circuit before the pit stops, but as they made the way into the pits, come out the other side, Cox has now come out behind once again, going all in here, and Edo's in return. Well, he knows all he really needs to do is defend 4 corners. That is, of course, turn 1, 2, and also the run down into the chase at 21, and also this final corner here at 23, Murray's corner. But to do that, he's got to have a perfect run off of each and every corner that precedes it. And as they make the way across the timeline here, 15 minutes to go, and as they roar on to what is for them lap number 15, there's nothing between them here. Cox does have the pace, but Edo's, by comparison, has track position, and that goes a long way here on the Wahluu Mountain as they make the way onwards towards turn number 2 once more. But as they charge the way up the hill, there's plenty else going on further down the field as well. Adrian Kukulis moving up another position now, up into P7, ahead of Darren Sharples, who's fallen away back, and also Simon Hartley, who's had to be towed to the pits, who was at the time, in fact, running in P7 to correct that. So Kukulis making the pass on was Simon Hartley, and what exactly happened to the AM driver? Well, let's take a look back. As he made his way down the hill, Kukulis hot on his tail here as they made the way to turn 17 into Forest Elbow. They broke, and as they come through, Hartley, the rear of the car, just snapping loose. That Kukulis very smart on the brakes to avoid going into the TC Sport Corporate driver. But as they then made the way through, of course, Hartley jumping to the pits, being towed to the pits in respect of the rules. But as we return to the live pictures now, Nathan Foster and Joe Newman still going toe-to-toe here. As we're hearing that Carl McQuirk is in the pit lane. I'm not quite sure why he's still in the pit lane, but his race is absolutely unfolding the way he does not want it to after coming in from P5, and that's going to open things up for Daniel Thomas, who's moved up into P5 as a result of that. For Carl McQuirk, it's a way his race is unfolding, and it's a disastrous end to what's been a strong day for the Debutants. As I look out my content booth window, and I can see McQuirk's car still parked there. We'll have to try and find out what exactly has happened as soon as possible. But meanwhile, Nathan Foster here just breaking away from Joe Newman initially on the run down Conrad. But as they head up towards the chase, you can see the Audi starting to creep closer, with the Audi not known for its top end speed, much like the Porsche here, and I think the two just staying firm. Meanwhile, Edo's here. Wilcox taking a look up the inside, but still, it's a dummy. It's not close enough to make the move count, but again, it's an attempt to try and get Edo's to outbrake himself. But these two drivers, veterans, are racing one another and in this series, and neither one of them wanted to be intimidated right now as they make the way out to 23 and on to the next lap. But of course, the problem will be here for Edo's. If he comes up behind, what's the battle between Newman and Foster, and the two of them are taking time out of one another, then Edo's will find himself boxed in, and with that, he may just end up then having to be put on the back foot versus Cox, as he'll run out of the run in terms of the pace on from lap to lap. But as they make the way up the mountain straight here, they can see it right now. The two BMW drivers are just gradually inching closer to the two elites in front, but not close enough to really get into the mix here. And meanwhile, a little bit further down the order, we do look to what is Eric Stegen, who continues to run in P2 in the AM class here, with a 12-second advantage over Adrian Garcia, and right now this P2 definitely coming his way, and I don't think there's any question here, unless he puts a foot wrong, it is going to be a confident P2 finish for the Ferrari driver, albeit Aaron McGregor by comparison 10.5 seconds up the road and just in a world of his own, as we can see here our second place driver roaring on through turns 5, 6 and 7. But as he comes on through, we're hearing that there's been a tow to the pits for Matt Maddox, and Maddox being involved in a bit of an incident, the AM driver. And we'll try and get a replay of that very shortly. But meanwhile, looking back to the battle between Foster and Newman, and now Edo's and Cox have caught up to this. As they make the way down the hill, we jump aboard the gearbox of the Porsche from UKSimRacing Blue, and you can see this quartet of drivers here, the two elites really now starting to keep the pros at bay. But Foster goes deep, and as he comes out the corner, there's a reaction there from Edo's as Foster tries to get the power back down. But now this is where it's going to get tough, because Foster is essentially narrowing the battle for the Pro Class into a single lane formation as they make the way in the drag race up the Conrad and down into the chase. But as they roar the way downhill now, you can see how Cox really trying to reposition himself here, and as they make the way into the kink, well, it's very close there, but Cox just backs out slightly as they make the way out to the anchors. I think what Cox was trying to do there was try try to get Edos to keep the door open a little bit longer than he planned to. But again, Edos just seeing it coming and covering it off just in time. It could have been very close to tears there for the two of them. But Cox are looking up the inside again. Edos defending here. Cox now really in Edos' head as they make the way out to the final corner. On to the next lap they go. Still 10 minutes plus the final lap. And this pro battle going all the way down to micrometers here in regards to how close they're battling. But Cox goes deep and it gives Edos a bit of breathing room. That's going to open the gap up to at least 8 tenths, if not more, as they make the way up the mountain straight here. And you see Stephen Masters now closing in behind us. Meanwhile, Aaron McGregor now overtaking one of our elite drivers and moving up into P7 overall here. The AM driver is flying as he makes his way past Ryan Moles in the battle of the Audis on the drag stretch. But as they make the way up towards turn number 4, McGregor getting the clasp of this move firmly done. But meanwhile, speaking of AMs who are trying to make ground, here is Frank Clyde chasing after Mark Johnson. And Johnson, of course, getting ahead of Clyde based on strategy. And Clyde, the UKSimRacing corporate driver, trying to find his way past that Mercedes. The UKSimRacing Mercedes, however, we do know one thing about it. Absolutely roars in a straight line here, up through the gearbox. Perhaps lacks a little bit in terms of its top gear, top speed. But beyond that, making its way out towards 6th gear, you're going to be very hard-pressed to beat the Mercedes in a straight line acceleration battle as they make the way to turn 2. Clyde there just having to wait his turn as they roll their way now into single file, into the cutting very shortly. But rolling their way out of the second corner here. And you can see already Clyde really itching for that move, with Johnson just having a little bit of a wobble in the exit of turn 2, but not coming unstuck at all as they head on through and up the mountain. They continue to rise. But rolling the way through 5 and 6, we jump aboard the gearbox here. Oh, what is briefly, in fact, we're not going to jump on the gearbox at all here as we focus. Oh, goodness me, and what on earth has happened there? Peter Cox has been an instant. Stephen Masters has gone round as he's trying to take evasive action. Well, there's a lot more to this tale than meets the eye, and we'll try to find out what exactly happened very shortly. But goodness me, that's not the way anybody's wanted it to go. And I think Peter Cox, the other wounded car, may be considering coming into the pits. But let's take a look back at what exactly happened there in the battle for the lead of the pro class. So coming on down through Forest Elbow, onto the power, goes a little bit deeper, brief. Was there a tap to the wall? Either way, whether it was correct, his steering gone too far. Alternatively, tapping the rear of the car to the wall. In the end, Stephen Masters trying to go round the outside of the UKSimRacing driver. And in the end, as Peter Cox rejoined the other wayward car, which is trying to tame and bring under control. Well, unfortunate for Masters, and I think for Peter Cox, he's carrying on here. But the damage he's now got to the car, that may be the end of that battle for P2. And with a gap of 5.5 seconds to David Larson, could a battle for would his P2 now start to unfold? Well, it should be the battle for the wins over, and the battle for P2 could now be on the horizon. But as our drivers make the way on up the mountain once more, we look to Mark Johnson, has fallen by Frank Clyde, and well, Frank Clyde making that ground then. We were already talking about these two moments ago, and well, how exactly did the move get made? Here's a replay. Was a poor run out of Forest Elbow there for Johnson, and in the end it was a drag race down Conrad. You can see here as the top end speed starts to kick in for the BMW M4, just able to inch ahead little by little onto the brakes as they made the way through the kick of 20, but as they came down, in fact, in the end, Johnson back it off before he needed to even consider breaking into the corner. As they made the way out to there, we look back to live pictures now. There was a car off at the corner just after. I think that was Chris Edisford, in fact, had a bit of a rally cross moment as he made his way across the chase chicane. But as we look to live pictures here, not long left in today's race, and still time ticks on, and some drivers still looking to make a bit more ground. And speaking of one of them, here is Daniel Lee, and behind you can see it's Sean Valandia, who is trying to find a way to take the podium away from the 188 Ferrari. But the thing with Daniel Lee, of course, is he will map this out to a T with regards to exactly how much fuel he needs and how fast he can go from corner to corner here. So I think for Valandia, he's going to have to go a long way to find this. But meanwhile, Matthew Crisp just in front, having a slow run out the final corner, running wide out of Murray's corner, and now really coming back into the fight here for P2 through to P4, with Lee now within 3 tenths. So they make the way up the mountain straight here, and well, with limited laps remaining, including this one, 4 more laps to go, as we're to understand Håkon Grebstad being almost 12 seconds clear. But Crisp here under pressure as they make the way into the right-hander of turn 2, into Griffiths Bend as they come on through, roaring onto the right-hander. Well, Lee's mates go to the outside. Crisp comes it off here, and Lee has to slow the car more than he would like. And now Sean Valandia is going to try and look around the outside of Lee as they head into the cutting, but there's going to be no way that Valandia has to back off. And of course, he'll remember what happened between himself and Damien Lobbett in the road of this corner. He won't want to repeat of that. And as they head out of turn 4 and onwards towards Quarry Corner of turns 5 and 6. Up the hill they go, and now for the TE SimSport Kiwi driver from the US of A, he's just going to have to stay at bay for now and look for the run out of Forest Elbow to go on the offensive again. Roaring on through and into left-hander there on McPhillamy Park. We say hello to Damien Lobbit there in the YouTube chat, or Jay Winks as he's also known, and talking about being Rob's there. Very unfortunate moment for you, Damien. We can completely understand. I think many a heart will go out to you with regards to what happened at the cut-in, but that's what happens, of course, with such a tight and narrow circuit and close margins and the contact. But again, we completely understand how you may feel at the moment. But as we continue to look to the battle for P2 here, well, Daniel Thomas, meanwhile, back in P5. We haven't really talked too much about the championship leader in the elite class, the ProTech Motorsport driver here. A difficult qualifying session, and will not quite on the pace of the top 4 right now. But I think the fact that he's looking at a P5 finish, a comfortable P5 finish with a 4-second gap over Dean Powell, I think Thomas will very happily take that and move on to the next round. But as they head on down the hill, meanwhile, we look a little bit further back in the order to P2 in the AM class here, and closing on to David Lowerson, and there's Eric Stegen as he rolls his way into Forest Elbow here, and right now lapping at a similar pace to Larson, although I think Larson actually quite recently making the move for what was P12 overall on the AM driver here, and the two of them swapping places. And for David Larson at this point, with 6.5 seconds of a gap between himself and Peter Cox, well, I think for Larson, he's going to do everything he can to close down that gap. But in fact, what we can tell you at the moment, if you want the fastest driver in the pro class, he may be in a wounded car, he may have had a bruise to his pride, but one thing that it's not done is stopped him from setting the fastest laps in class, lapping in the 205s. Everybody else in the 206s or higher. Cox right now lapping almost half a second a lap faster than Eddowes, but with the gap being 2.8 seconds, he crosses the timeline, and on that lap, almost a whole second faster than Eddowes. With Cox can carry up at this rate of knots on the final lap, he could be there challenging for the win in the pro class once again. Meanwhile, speaking of being under threat right now, Frank Klein under pressure from Chris Eddersford, as well, I think Klein's made the move there in the run down Conrad, but now Eddersford's trying to come back here for overall position. Of course, these two, the pro chasing the AM at this point as they head into Murray's Corner, and a number of AMs here today really showing their fangs and showing just how fast they are. And I wonder if they'll already be thinking about the fact they may just be promoted to the pro class as what is the next season. Of course, classes finalised for this season of the GT3 League, but the season at 10 classes will definitely be under consideration early on. But meanwhile, we've had another instant, and Matthew Crisp has dropped to P4, albeit it's gone very slowly through the dipper, so I don't think it's been a race ender, but it's become close to it. We'll come back to it in a second, as right now we look back to the drag race here between Eddersford and Klein. Eddersford on the right of your picture, trying to go around the outside in the McLaren MP4 12C versus the TE SimSport machine, but the UKSimRacing driver has to back off. They're not able to find the run all the way round, and in the end relents for a brief moment. But as we have a moment to talk about what happened to Matthew Crisp as he makes his way down Conrad here, and well, can we see any visible damage? We can. It looks as though that front left tyre has been severely hit on the suspension. You can see, in fact, look at all the wheel arch has been completely stripped around the car, and as a result, the tyre is really in a bad state of wear. In fact, the car is what we call crabbing. They're not pointing in a straight line. Crispin's going to try and get to the end of the race with only 2 more laps to go on the time, but I think this may be a car that's had seen at better days, and a pit stop may be on the cards before the final lap. But this is what exactly happened. So making his way into Forest Elbow here with Daniel Lee just behind, coming down through Skyline, rolling down, rear of the car let go, and it was a major whack to the wall. But oh goodness me, Sean Valandia there coming into the scene of the incident, and with contact. Well, right now both drivers there wounded with cars, and we'll give you what they look like from Sean Valandia's perspective on board, as of course he's got Daniel Lee in front of him. Now just trail braking for he'll presume that everything's fine, because he can't see at this point what's happened to Crisp, and only now he can see something's gone wrong for Crisp, reacts, and then it just goes a little bit deep into the corner there. I think over braking on the car, and also slamming the brakes on there to try and just stop the car completely, and it was a nasty knock to the front of the McLaren. But Valandia in P3 in class now, and well, he's definitely had a few knocks to the car's return to the live pictures. It has been a difficult one for so many drivers, and as our drivers make their way around here, Chris definitely struggling on, and Daniel Thomas now the next driver who's going to come on through here and take another place. So I think the Welshman here, he's going to be thinking at the end of this race that whilst he's not been on the pace, it's consistency that's been so key. As you see Chris there just peeling off the racing line, knowing that Thomas is coming, and well, the next driver will be Powell, who's only a further 3 seconds back and closing rapidly. But Daniel Thomas right now will be picking up, will be the major beneficiary of all the losses of the drivers in front of him, but it's definitely been an odd race for Daniel Thomas and not what we've normally seen from him in terms of race leading pace, but still he'll take the points. As meanwhile we look at Adrian Kukulis here, the next driver to try and find his way past Chris Eddersford, with what we can see there is Mark Johnson quite recently finding his way on through. The pro driver here being swarmed by the AMs at a late point in the day, as we're in that Dean Powers made his way past Chris, but meanwhile as they make the way on through, we look to the race leader overall in the elite class. It's Håkon Grebstad, the Indian Motorsport driver, who goes onto a 22nd and final lap here today at Mount Panorama. And well, right now he is in a world of his own, lapping in the 204s and the 203s, where everybody else is lapping in the 205s. Although I say that, and Daniel Lee decides to prove a point by setting the 204.829. But the key point here is that Grebstad has just been lapping so consistently and looking to not slow down whatsoever here. And even on the final lap right now, as the clock will be striking 45 minutes by the time he's cleared the cut-in, he's not backing off here. This is going to be a dominant display to add a third win to his tally. But meanwhile, speaking to somebody else who's been running dominant, as he's now moved up to P6 overall, it's your AM leader of Aaron McGregor in the 51 Audi for AMR Racing. The man is absolutely pushing on here as he heads up towards turn number 2. His next target is Dean Powell. I think if he had enough laps, he'd be looking at an overall top 5, because he is lapping a second a lap faster than Dean Powell right now. As meanwhile, Ryan Moles there comes on through past Matthew Chris, gets the move done there, of course, with Chris not in a car that's fit to really battle, but Chris is going to soldier on all the way to the end to finish this race as high as he can, rather than be towed. So you can understand why there, of course. But as they make the way into the cut-in, meanwhile Adrian Kukulis all over the back of Chris Eddersford as they head into turn number 23. Eddersford not showing any signs there of a mistake. Kukulis have a very strong corner exit, and as they head across the timeline, the McLaren just able to go up through the gearbox a little bit faster compared to the Porsche, so Kukulis is going to have to do this in the run up towards Griffiths Bend. Alternatively, it's going to be in the drag race down Conrad. He's got to have an absolutely planted run. But meanwhile, speaking of Conrad and speaking of being planted, he's not put a foot wrong all day today, and with only one more corner between himself and victory, it's going to be 3-2 in terms of wins versus Daniel Thomas. And what a way to do it here. It didn't go right in the official 12 hours of Bathurst, but for Håkon Grebstad from Indian Motorsport, it's all gone perfect as he crosses the line 16 seconds clear to take the overall and elite win. What a phenomenal drive for the 37 driver. P2 meanwhile will go to Daniel Lee in a race that once again has proven that strategy and consistency has been ever key, and the privateer there second on the podium in the elite class and overall, ahead of Sean Valandia, who with the damaged McLaren comes on over for P3, albeit a bit of a grey cloud hanging over the T-Sport Kimmy driver for the incident between himself and Damien Lobbit, but still he'll be pleased with P3 on circuit, with Daniel Thomas coming home to P4 there. The elite championship leader will have a wound made to his championship lead today, but he'll be happy with the damage limitation. Dean Powell with a great P5 behind, and then Aaron McGregor with the win in the AM class, P6 overall. Would you believe it? The AMR driver flying on high ahead of Ryan Moles, P7 overall. Joe Newman at P8 there, and P7 in class. John Eddowes meanwhile comes on through to hold off Peter Cox to the line by a second in the end to take the pro win. Peter Cox P2 in the pro class, P10 overall, that's your overall top 10, and then that's the rest there. Matthew Crisp, who survived to P8 in the elite class, P11 overall, ahead of David Lowerson, and then followed up by Eric Steigen at P3 there. David Lyson in the pro class, meanwhile Eric Steigen P13 overall, but more importantly P2 in the AM class there, ahead of AG Garcia, and then Stephen Masters comes on through very shortly to complete P15 overall and P9 in the elite class, which has been a difficult day today for Masters. Of course, that incident between himself and Peter Cox upsetting the apple cart in regards to his race, but still ahead of Mark Johnson there, P16, P4 in the AM class, and then Chris Eddersford battling to P4 in the pro class in the end, but battling with the AMs all around him. Adrian Kukulis completes the AM top 5, P18 in the overall consideration, ahead of Darren Sharples, P6 there, the AM class, P19, and then James Colley just behind it there, top 20 finish completed by James Colley, P7 in the AM class. And I believe we have a couple more finishers yet to conclude their races, including Richard Curie, who finishes P22 behind Nathan Scott and takes P8 there in the AM class. There's Curie for Team Zor. But as our drivers all make their way either to the pit lane immediately, or a lot of our drivers are now playing to do, ladies and gentlemen. They're getting ready to do the Bathurst jump. And well, I can tell you one thing already. We do have some drivers roaring the way on down, including Dean Powell, who'll be the first to attempt it here in the number 6 BMW M4. I believe he'll be attempting it as he charges over. Goes into the gravel here. The car snakes, of course. He goes to the jump. Does he land it? Well, he does land it, but it's a knock to the wall. And then, meanwhile, we look a little bit further back to other drivers in the field, including Ben Watkinson, who finished P11 in the AM class, and he hits the wall before he makes it to the tyre barrier. He skims over it and just about makes it, albeit the car not in many pieces. And now, meanwhile, we look to Håkon Grebstad here as all the field are lined up behind and get themselves set to make the jump. And Grebstad leads the whole pack away here as Chris will be limping along here, and I think he'll be tucking away and out the way. But can our race winner land the jump and make his way home, or will he find the wall at the very end? Well, place your bets, ladies and gentlemen, as he makes his way on down here with everybody else following on behind as he roars his way up to top gear here, makes his way onto the gravel. Will he land it? He does almost make it, but hits the wall corner exit. Meanwhile, we see Sean Valendia coming across as well. In fact, not carrying enough speed to do it. Meanwhile, John Eddowes has crossed it already and not quite made it. Peter Cox, he lands it, but he ends up to the wall. And we can see a couple more cars there going charging across as well. I believe David Larson in pieces there. And we see Aaron McGregor, well, he's made his way to the win today, but not making it across. But as we do look to some of the other incidents for our drivers there, we do take another look back. And we look in particular to what was the blimp camera as our drivers made their way on through. And Aaron McGregor in amongst this group will be actually going quite slowly in the group there. And we look to John Eddowes, who, well, in fact, I think Eddowes getting pinned on the tyre barrier as he tries to make his way across. But everyone there trying to make it through, but nobody quite able to successfully make the entire jump there and make their way down towards the final corner as it looks it. So unlucky for them. But as we do return to our live pictures then, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after what is 45 minutes of racing today in round 6 of the GT3 League Season 9, as brought to you by UKSimRacing, hosted on the iRacing platform of the Mount Panorama Raceway, Håkon Grebstad there taking the overall win by 15.5 seconds for England Motorsport over the privateer of Daniel Lee. Sean Valendia completing the podium for overall for UKSimRacing Kimi, ahead of Daniel Thomas of ProTech Motorsport, not on the pace today. But Thomas definitely with damage limitation, and then Dean Powell completed the top 5. They're all elite drivers, and then in P6, overall, your AM winner of Aaron McGregor, finishing 2 seconds clear of Ryan Moles, with Joe Newman, P8, ahead of your pro winner, TKSimRacing Kimi's John Eddowes, who just beat Peter Cox to the line by a single second in the end, but it was close between the TKSimRacing Kimi and UKSimRacing drivers, and they rounded off your overall top 10. From this point onwards, of course, we just focus on best of the rest and what is your podium finishes in the classes. Best of the rest there, P11, Matthew Criswell, wounded car, but he got it to the line in the end, and then David Larson rounded off the pro podium P3 in class, P12 overall for Symphony Esports White, Eric Steigen at P13 there for the privateer, second place in the AM class, and then AG Garcia completed our AM podium for Team Zor in P14 overall. But as we look down the order there to show you how everybody finished overall, a difficult day for many a driver. Adrian Kukulas fighting hard for that P18 and what was in the end P5 in class, headed down Sharples and James Colley to complete the top 20. And as we continue on down, a good number of drivers finishing a lap down. And starting from what was Michael Warrington, with our last drive to finish on the lead lap being Team Zor's Richard Curie finishing P22, but Warrington leading on through all the following drivers who finished a lap down. So Warrington at Frank Klein, at Ben Watkinson, at Brock Freight, Simon Hartley, and also at Dion Wren. And we also had finishing at 4 laps down at Nathan Foster and Casper Brotner. 5 laps down was Thomas Barjak in P31, and then the retirements including Matt Maddox, Carl McGurk, Damien Lobbett, Daniel Pays, Austin William Campbell, Darren Fellows, and Cy Anthony. Unfortunate for them, and indeed it's been a good day for some, a difficult one for others. But as we look on to our class finishing positions down the class standings, we can see starting with the elite class, Håkon Grebstad there with that win, and now with 3 wins to 2 over Daniel Thomas, the championship momentum could be swinging his way late in the day in this championship with only 2 more rounds to go. But do not count out Daniel Lee, another battle for P2, albeit to really dig in for it and let Lady Luck also take the wheel at certain points. But that's what it's all about here at Bathurst. It's about keeping it out of the wall, and he managed to do so there on a great strategy. And Sean Valendia completed the top 3 ahead of Daniel Thomas, the ProTech Motorsport driver, in a solid drive there, and not quite on the pace as we said earlier, but still picking up the pieces that were left behind by others, and I don't think he'll be complaining too much about that. Dean Powell in P5 there, the privateer ahead of Ryan Moles, with Moles also not at the pace of Protect Motorsport and really having to pick up the points he could. Joe Newman there finishing P7 ahead of Nathan Foster in their battle, albeit with two drivers between the pair of them, with the iRacing Red drive being followed up by the privateer Matthew Crisp and the Tiki Sport Tour driver of that Stephen Masters. Nathan Foster round off the elite top 10 for iRacing Blue, ahead of retirees of Carl McGurk, best of the rest there, Damien Lovett, Austin William Campbell, Si Anthony and Martin Tillin. Unfortunate for them, but as we then come on to the Pro Class, we can see here that your winner by 1 second in John Eddowes for TC Sport Kimmy, keeping the UKSimRacing driver Peter Cox away to the line, albeit I think Peter Cox would be argued if it were not for that mistake at Forest Elbow with only 8 laps to go, could he have potentially made it a win today, because John Eddowes retook the lead on strategy after the round of pit stops and then never looked to let it go. But Peter Cox was always looking fast, and I think the championship could go down to the two of them at the rate of knots it's proceeding at. David Larson at third place there, a good return to the podium for the Civic Esports white driver, 9 seconds off of the race winner, but a sizable margin there of what was almost 40 seconds ahead of Chris Edison for UKSimRacing, who completed P4, and then Nathan Scott P5 there for iRacing Blue, with Dion Wren and Darren Fellows completing your standings, albeit the unfortunate retirement for Darren Fellows with 15 laps to go. And then coming on to the M class, not by no means least, we can see here Aaron McGregor taking that win by 20.7 seconds over fellow privateer Eric Steigen, with Adrian Garcia rounding off the podium there in a season first for Adrian Garcia to be on the podium, if our memory serves me correctly, for Team Zor. And then we see Mark Johnson for UKSimRacing and Adrian Kukulis completed the top 5. Darren Sharples P6 there, not quite on the pace of the top 5, but still digging in for the result ahead of James Conley, with Richard Curie, Michael Warrington and Frank Klein completed the top 10. And then Ben Watkinson having started from the very back of the field, finishing P11 then. It just goes to show you can pick up the pieces when others do drop it, and Ben Watkinson embodying that in the last couple of rounds and continue to show that. The privateer ahead of Brock Freites, Simon Hartley and Casper Brotner. And then we did have the Thomas Barjak, who rounded off our finishers of this race, albeit 5 laps down, and the 2 retirees are Matt Maddox and Daniel Pays. But those are the race results, ladies and gentlemen, and now we get ready for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. It has definitely been a difficult day in the Australian sun. The mountain has claimed many, but also many have claimed victory here today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in approximately 10 minutes to hear the thoughts from a multitude of our drivers on what they made of Mount Panorama. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then and ready for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. Now today, we only have one driver who's decided to join us, and he's really been our driver who has been running away with proceedings undoubtedly over the course of today, and that is none other than Håkon Grebstad, who we'll be hearing from very shortly to get his perspective on running not just the McLaren up front for the entirety of the race, but also that run of dominance, and what does it take to be able to put in the ultimate qualifying lap here at the Bathurst circuit. Really has been another demonstration of his prowess, and of course we did hear from one of his colleagues from Motorsport in the YouTube chat with regards to the fact looking for redemption today. Well, he's definitely found it, but hey, why not hear from the man himself as he does join us now. We just ask him to join us in the Discord interview room. And as he joins me now, Håkon, may I just say up front, if we ever needed proof of who the king of the mountain is, well, I think you've definitely earned that accolade, good sir. Just from your perspective, how do you feel right now after 45 minutes of running around there without fault? I mean, have you even scratched a sweat, let alone how to sort of panic about it? You looked flawless out there.
I mean, once I got a pretty big lead, I calmed down pretty quick. So yeah, not as sweaty as I could have been, I suppose.
Oh, indeed. And just dialing it back in terms of, before we got into the race, talking a bit about qualifying. We saw in qualifying you put together a very strong pole lap in the M4, 10th faster than anybody else out there. But what does it take from your perspective to put together a strong qualifying lap in the McLaren MP412C at Bathurst? Because, of course, this car, no stranger to being very loose on its rear end.
I mean, we ran this car for the 12-hour, although it got cut short because of an incident, so we only ran for a couple hours. But yeah, we worked on a setup, and I had a setup ready that was fairly stable. I did make a last-minute change for this race. I changed the ARB to not be as loose in the rear, but I honestly, I think that was a mistake. I think it slowed me down once I lost the tire grip after 4 or 5 laps.
Well, a small change, but even though you may have lost a little bit of pace and tyre grip after laps, it didn't slow you down in qualifying. And I have to ask, with regards to the qualifying lap itself, was it the best you could get out there, or was there a bit more time?
There's 100% a bit more time, but it's very hard to get everything exactly right over the mountain and down the mountain and all that. But yeah, there was definitely a bit more time out there, but it was hard to get.
Well, despite the fact there's a bit more time out there, putting it on pole, and as we've just seen the race start, a little bit of a challenge at the very start, some pressure being put on you by your peers, but keeping the likes of Matthew Crisp behind in the run from turn number 1, and then a Ford GT materialised, I think helped you put a bit of space between the rest of the field.
yeah, I got that gap pretty quick and just drove away with it, to be honest. Yeah.
Then breaking away, of course, what was the aim in terms of, did you expect if you could make an early break, it was put in a set of qualifying laps, or was it more about just see how the pace of the race went?
Well, I went pretty hard out the first 2 or 3 laps just to, build that gap. And once I saw that I could calm it down a little bit and still maintain and possibly even increase the gap, then that's what I did, just to avoid, having an incident and getting a wall or something. It's very easy to do around here.
Oh, most definitely. And with regards to that transition, of course, just take us through when you're running around here, attacking it full pelter first, of course, to try and open up that gap, and then have to calm things down. What do you adjust to avoid that risk of hitting the wall? Because, of course, the great Ayrton Senna, one of those drivers who always ran at 100%, and rumoured if he dialed it down even slightly, the walls got ever closer, and it wasn't too far away from an incident. How do you balance the risk versus reward in that regard?
I mean, you can't make dramatic changes, but just, coming off the throttle a little earlier and, just coast a little bit before going onto the brakes and just giving yourself a bit more time to set up the corners usually helps me. And it doesn't lose you much time, like over a lap, maybe a time or two.
Well, indeed, the laps kept pouring on in, and we saw towards the end of the race you really pushing towards mid 203s and also low 204s, where everyone else was doing 204s and 205s. Was there a bit of a game at the end with yourself in terms of how fast could I make the fastest lap of this race?
I was very tempted to just go for it on the final lap, but I decided not to do that, considering the new like tow rule and everything. If you're if you're stuck in an awkward place or forced to tow, and yeah, it's not something I wanted.
Oh.
So yeah, played it safe.
Completely understandable there. You wouldn't want all your hard work undone by a final lap piece of drama. But of course, speaking of drama in the championship, with the result today, going into today, it was an 8 points gap. And I do believe that gap now has come down to a margin of what is 2 points, if not you're dead even now with your rival of Daniel Thomas. How are you feeling with 2 rounds to go and you have a 1-win advantage over your rival?
Yeah, I believe I'm 2 points behind. I looked into the point system and all that. I believe he got 4th, right? So that would be 14 points. So yeah, that gap would have come down by 6 points. Yeah, I'm hoping, there's 2 more races to go. I'm hoping I can do well. It's going to come down to possibly the last race. Daniel Thomas is strong, so kind of, well, lucky for me that he didn't finish second tonight.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of races it's coming down to, next week we make our way to Brazil for a circuit that's no stranger to late drama in a championship campaign. How are you feeling for the Interlagos circuit?
Well, it's a track I like a lot. I'm not sure how the McLaren's going to do around there, but we'll find out real quick, I suppose.
Oh, indeed. Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in Brazil. But just before we do let you go, Håkon, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to live on the broadcast this evening, or a thank you to?
Yeah, just got to give a shout out to the Indian boys watching, and everyone over there for helping out, cheering me on. Yeah.
Well, they've definitely been cheering you on all the time in the YouTube chat. I mean, we've had Ben Hicks and also I do believe Paul King, with Ben saying that you're such a weapon around here, and, well, also looking for redemption here today after what happened in the Bathurst 12 hour. And that's my final question to you. Do you feel as though it has been redemption today?
I mean, I'd say that winning the Bathurst 12 is probably a little bit more prestigious than winning the race tonight, but it definitely makes up a little bit, yeah.
Oh, I think I can agree with you on that one. Not quite 12 hours, but still a dominant win all the same. And it's been a pleasure to have you join us this evening, Håkon. Congratulations once again on the win overall in the elite class, and we look forward to seeing you on circuit in a week's time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All the best. So hearing there from our outright winner today, Håkon Grebstad from Ignition Motorsport, who just flew away from the field. Indeed, as we're looking back at the replay footage currently, this is only what is effectively 4 laps into the race. In fact, not even 4, 3 laps into the race. So you could already see how much of a gap the Ignition Motorsport driver had built out over the rest of the field, and just putting his head down, breaking away, and then at a certain point decided to turn down the wick briefly in order to be able to give himself a little bit more calm and cool and just manage those laps all the way to the finish. And of course, mentioning that there was a temptation to go for an even fast lap right at the end of the race to try and change what was a fastest lap of a 203.76 to something perhaps a low 203, perhaps even go for a 202 depending on how he felt with the car. But in the end, our elite driver deciding no, enough was enough and playing it safe, because of course, if it had gone wrong over the course of the mountain, it would have been a mandatory tow to the pit, and what would have been a guaranteed win would have been laying in ashes instead. But definitely the man has been a weapon here today, and I suspect right now he is going to be looking to go all guns firing going into the final 2 rounds of this championship to take the fight to Daniel Thomas, with only 2 points separating the 2 of them going into our penultimate round. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our post-round interviews today with our volunteer drivers. Only 1 volunteer available, and I think completely understandable. The majority of our drivers absolutely exhausted after the run up and down the mountain, and therefore all decided to call it early and get themselves rested for the trip to Sao Paulo in Brazil. But with that, we'll very, very shortly, we'll be taking a brief break, because we are just currently updating the championship standings, and we'll be right back in approximately 5 to 10 minutes' time to give you an update on exactly how the championship now sits after 6 rounds of 8 have been completed. Don't go anywhere. You'll want to keep updated with exactly how close to the wire it's going to go in the Elite, the Pro and the AM classes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we can give you an update on the standings after 6 of 8 rounds. Of course, keep in mind, these standings are provisional, subject to any stewards' inquiries after today's racing on the mountain of Mount Panorama. But in the elite standings, so the Drivers' Championship, firstly, we can see now, in fact, it is even points between Håkon Grebstad and Daniel Thomas, with the fact the Ignium Motorsport driver not just picking up the win, but also picking up the bonus points for fastest lap and pole position. They are dead heat on 112 points apiece going into the final 2 rounds. And now it really will be the argument of who is able to make each round count for this point onwards. Because there's fine margins. There are, of course, 1 drop score in the sprints and 1 drop score in the features. But our drivers will be concerned about the fact that it's going to go down to the very wire. And it does look as though Grebstad has the advantage going into the final 2 rounds. Outside the top 2, we can see that in P3 battling on and trying to hold on to the accolade of being the 3rd place driver and the effective runner-up outside the top 2. Daniel Lee on 84 points, 4 clear of Joe Newman. And holding off the charge of Joe Newman, another great performance today, are going to show the consistency and strategy shines on through in the Ferrari. Meanwhile, the iRacing Red driver having a difficult day today, and it will count as his drop score for the purposes of his sprint races. Still ahead of Ryan Moles, however, with our top 4 now standing a margin of what is their 21 points clear of the rest of the fielders led by Ryan Moles. Ryan Moles, the ProTech Motorsport driver, not quite close enough to take on the top 4 at the moment, but safe by 18 points from Sean Valendia, with the UKSimRacing Kimi driver having another great result today, albeit a bit of a dark cloud hanging over that result with the incidents he was involved in, particularly with Damien Lobbit, but of course that may be resolved after the race. Dean Powell in P7 there, the privateer ahead of fellow privateer Matthew Crisp, with Crisp having that instant cost him very dearly after what was looking to be a certain P2, and then Sam Congreve and Martin Tilling completing the top 10. Best of the rest outside of the top 10 and find up after the UKSimRacing Copper driver, Josh Fletcher there on 23 points, 2 clear of Cy Anthony, with Jacko Taylor and Damien Lobbit joined on 20 points there, P13, P14, Lobbit behind based on the result countback. And then we have Sam Sherwood and Joshua Pratt in a similar situation in P15, P16 on 17 points apiece, with Dan Blackwell on 16 points in 17th, and then Ryan Davies, Nathan Foster and Stephen Masters completing the top 20, with Alexander Hill at P21 ahead of Austin William Campbell, James Folks and Cameron Hawes. And then coming onto our pro class, we can see here, whilst in the elite, it's a very similar situation in the pros, in the fact that we have a top 2 that's trying to break away, albeit John Eddowes holding on to an advantage, which he slightly opened up a little bit further today by taking 113 points to 104 of Peter Cox. The gap now standing at 9 points compared to the 7 going into this round, and Peter Cox will know that he needs to take the win next time out in order to be able to find a way to bounce back here with 2 to go. Of course, John Eddowes is now our first repeat winner in the pro class, and can he prevent anybody else from becoming a repeat winner over the next 2 rounds? That will be the mission for the UKSimRacing Kimi driver, and the UKSimRacing driver Cox will be looking to make sure that his name is also added to the list of repeat winners for the pros. Outside the top 2, Alex Gaines still there in P3, albeit not in attendance today, ahead of Edward Knight by a margin of 3 points, with both drivers missing out in Bathurst. And then we can see Nathan J. Scott moving into P5 though with 35 points, now 15 clear of Chris Eddersford, whose struggles continue, albeit battling hard today, and David Larson at P7 there ahead of Tom Farr, with Jeff Griffiths and Joel Amos completing the top 10. And Dion Wren completing the run to the best of the rest in P11, 3 points clear of Colin Patterson, with the UKSimRacing Kimi driver being the UKSimRacing driver, I should say, being followed up by BDM Races Darren Fellows, and it's Paul Smith, Jakob Boschov, Stuart Brown, Mark Collicott, Martin Ferdy, Daniel Merchant, and Ollie Pimley, who complete your pro standings. Then coming on to the AM class, meanwhile, we can see here leading the way by an advantage that has grown to 32 points after today. Aaron McGregor, the privateer, looks unstoppable and certain perhaps to take the championship crown, or at least have one hand on it come the end of next time out if his run of form continues. 2 wins on the bounce of the sprints, followed up from the win at Magny-Cours. Now a hat-trick of wins. Can he make it a quartet? That'll be his challenge to make sure this championship is well out of reach for everybody behind him. Meanwhile, the hunt to be the best of the rest in P2 downwards. Casper Brotner, the old dudes in cars driver, having a dramatic start to his day today in terms of the race at Bathurst, but still bringing home a key point and ahead of Darren Sharples by a single point as the 2 of them look to battle it out for P2. They are 5 points ahead of Adrian Kukulis there. The Porsche privateer continue to stay in the hunt, 1 point clear of Michael Warrington, with the UKSimRacing car Marte driver having difficulties in the race that have cost him dear, and then Eden Frazina not in the 10th stage, dropping to P6, still 10 points clear of James Connolly, with Mark Johnson, Eric Stegen and Matt Maddox completing the top 10. And a key mention there to our P9 driver, the priority of Eric Stegen, for the fact of moving up into P9 now, 3 points clear of Matt Maddox, and continue that run of form with a great drive to second place today. And he'll be looking to have one more podium, particularly next time out, to make it 3 second places in a row. Can he perhaps go one step further and make it a win? Outside the top 10, best of the rest, Brock Freight's there for UKSimSport in a difficult day today, cost him dear, with the UKSimSport driver now only what is 1 point clear of Daniel Pace from Old Dudes in Cars, with Ben Watkinson P13 moving into 13th place there ahead of Thomas Barjuk, with Adrian Garcia, Ryan Gonzalez, Frank Klein, Jack Bullen, Richard Curie and Simon Hartley completing your AM Championship standings. But then coming on to the team standings, meanwhile, we can see here ProTech Motorsport continue to lead at 30 points clear of UKSimSport Kimi, but I do believe there's a little bit of a miscalculation there on the standings. I think it's 166 points for UKSimSport Kimi, and therefore the advantage is in actuality 16 points. But ProTech Motorsport's lead has been dented today with the difficulties for their drivers not on the pace, but they still have the initial advantage, and UKSimSport Kimi are playing catch up. Meanwhile, UKSimRacing there in third place, continue to hunt down the top two and inching closer, with Ignium Motorsport there in P4 at 114 points, gaining ground on the top three, albeit looking to continue to break away, with UKSimSport Car Marte and Old Dudes in Cars hunting down Ignium Motorsport and looking to keep them honest. We can then see SimRacing ahead on P7 with an advantage there over Ignium Motorsport Spark, albeit the point's not quite correct, so we can't give you that exact advantage, but we get that corrected for the purposes of next time out. And then we see Ignium Motorsport Spark being followed up with SimRacing Blue, with Symphony Esports White completing the top 10. Best of the rest in P11, BDM Racing there, ahead of UKSimSport Toa, Corpa and SimSport. And then we do have in P15 Team Azor behind the trio of UKSimSport teams, and in Symphony Esports Black round off our standings in P16. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our recap of the standings after today, and now we must wrap things up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, then why not check out our official website, which you saw flashed up earlier on in today's broadcast. Our website may be found at uksimracing.co.uk, where you can stay up to date with all the latest events that are ongoing, all the latest championship standings, and what else is upcoming with regards to Series over 2023. Or if you don't want to go to our website, but perhaps you want to go to one of our social media pages, we are very welcome to follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_, where you keep up to date with all the latest broadcasts and also the trials and tribulations of our esports racing teams, as well as the series that are upcoming in the calendar year. We'd also like to take this moment to give a big thank you to our affiliates, and we can see there we have our 5 affiliates, starting with Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, and Swello Meta, of course, the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist, and his coaching can help take you to your sim racing driving to the next level, we should say. Whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swello Meta has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swello being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSSCC, you know you are receiving coaching for the very best in the industry. We also have their Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Also, Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks can help drive you to realise your real world or sim racing motorsport ambitions. Also, our new affiliate as of this week for 2023, SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing-related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports. With in-house engineering and production facilities which combine Dutch design and high-end craftsmanship, Siman is the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. And then lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Alexa, Amazon Prime, and one-click shopping. But as we now look ahead to next time, of course, we head to Brazil for the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache in our penultimate round of the season and our final sprint on the cards. Round 7 will take place on Sunday, the 26th of February, 2023. We can see that in the AM class, it looks though Aaron McGregor is running away with proceedings, but meanwhile in the Pro class, well, Peter Cox today has not been able to reel in John Eddowes, but he'll be looking to do so over the final 2 rounds. And in the elite class, it is a neck-and-neck rivalry between Håkon Grebstad and Daniel Thomas. How will it all unfold in Brazil, a circuit known for championship drama? We'll find out next Sunday. But until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.